It was just another late night in Los Angeles, and Elon Musk was on his way home after a long day filled with meetings, phone calls, and high-stakes decisions. The world's richest man had just wrapped up a brainstorming session at SpaceX's headquarters, and his mind was spinning with ideas of Mars colonization, Tesla innovations, and the latest advancements in artificial intelligence. His stomach growled, a reminder that it had been hours since he had last eaten. Driving through the city's neon-lit streets, Elon spotted the familiar golden arches of McDonald's in the distance. It was his go-to comfort food, an unassuming, fast, and reliable way to end the night. After all, even billionaires had cravings. He wasn't in the mood for anything fancy or experimental. Just a simple Big Mac and fries. Nothing more, nothing less. The drive-thru was open, and the line wasn't long. He rolled down his window, prepared to place his usual order. As the car inched forward, he smiled at the thought of the familiar employees behind the counter, their friendly banter, and their casual nods of recognition. He was just another customer tonight, no Tesla CEO, no SpaceX innovator. Just Elon. The moment his car pulled up to the window, however, things took an unexpected turn. The young woman behind the counter, whose name tag read Jessica, looked at him with a mix of confusion and something else, maybe discomfort. "Hi, I'll have a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke," Elon said, his tone casual, as if it was just another night. Jessica hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning him. She fumbled with the register, her fingers pausing over the keys. Then, she looked up at him again, her expression uncertain. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, almost apologetically. "But we can't serve you." Elon blinked, a moment of confusion hanging in the air. Did she just say what he thought she said? "I'm sorry, what?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. He wasn't angry, just confused. "We can't serve you," she repeated. "There's a policy." "I'm not sure. I'm just following orders." A thick silence settled in the car. Elon's mind raced as he tried to process what had just happened. A mistake? A misunderstanding? Maybe the system was malfunctioning. He glanced through the window, expecting to see some sort of manager or another employee who could clarify the situation, but the crew was still standing behind the counter, seemingly unfazed by the awkward exchange. "What do you mean, you can't serve me?" Elon asked again, his voice calmer than he felt. "Is there a problem with the order?" "I'm just trying to grab some food." Jessica looked down at the register and then back at him, her face a mixture of apology and reluctance. I really don't know," she said, shifting nervously. "But I've been told we're not allowed to serve you tonight." It's a policy thing." "A policy thing?" Elon's mind couldn't make sense of the words. He had been through countless security checks at SpaceX, and he was used to the occasional odd interaction from people who were nervous about meeting someone of his stature. But this wasn't the same. This wasn't a fan or an overwhelmed employee. This was something else entirely. Now, a part of Elon's brain was trying to make sense of what was going on, while another part was getting frustrated at the ridiculousness of the situation. Who refused to serve a paying customer in a drive-thru? Especially someone who wasn't causing trouble, who wasn't being unreasonable. "Listen, I don't know what the issue is," Elon said, keeping his tone even. "But this doesn't make any sense. I'm just here for a meal. I'm not looking to cause problems." Jessica's lips parted as if she was about to speak, but no words came out. She simply stood there, her eyes darting around in confusion. Elon exhaled sharply, trying to stay calm. Something wasn't adding up. A low murmur began to rise from behind the counter. The other workers were talking quietly among themselves, and from the snippets of conversation Elon could catch, he heard words like, company policy, and, management said no. His patience, usually endless in the face of billion-dollar challenges, was wearing thin. But before he could say anything else, a man in a suit appeared at the window. He was a manager. He looked at Elon, his expression cool and guarded, like someone who had been prepared for this moment. "Mr. Musk, I apologize for the confusion," the manager said with a slight bow of his head, though his voice was far from warm. "There's been an issue with the franchise's directive tonight. Unfortunately, we are unable to serve you at this time." Elon's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward slightly in his seat. This wasn't the usual customer service misstep. There was something more to this, something deliberate. "An issue with the directive?" Elon repeated, his voice rising a bit. "You're telling me McDonald's refuses to serve a paying customer, for no reason?" The manager shifted awkwardly, his hands clasped behind his back. "I assure you, it's not personal. There are circumstances that I can't discuss. I'm afraid it's out of my hands." Elon sat back in his car, trying to wrap his head around the absurdity of the situation. McDonald's refusing to serve him. And then he noticed something strange. The logo on the store's sign looked different than he remembered. Was there something more to this? Was it a corporate move, or a personal attack? He glanced at Jessica again, but she had already retreated from the window, and the manager, sensing the building tension, gave a quick nod and backed away from the car. "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Musk," the manager said quickly, closing the window with a soft click. As Elon sat in his car, staring at the closed window in front of him, a strange feeling began to settle in his chest. This wasn't just a moment of being snubbed or ignored. This was a challenge, a provocation, and something told him that it was only the beginning. But what kind of challenge? And who exactly was behind it? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The night's events lingered in Elon Musk's mind long after he left the McDonald's parking lot. The Big Mac, fries, and Coke he had been craving seemed insignificant now. His thoughts spun like the gears of a Tesla engine, trying to make sense of what had just transpired. He was no stranger to conflict, but this felt different. Why would McDonald's, one of the largest and most recognizable corporations in the world, refuse to serve him, without explanation, without warning? And, more importantly, why now? It wasn't the first time Elon had been caught in a surreal moment, but tonight's interaction felt more personal, more targeted. The rejection gnawed at him as he made his way home, the comfortable hum of his Tesla doing little to soothe his mind. A series of questions swirled in his head, each one more troubling than the last. Was it because of his outspokenness on certain issues? Was someone trying to send a message? Or had it simply been a misunderstanding? As he parked in front of his sprawling mansion in Bel Air, Elon couldn't help but replay the moment in his mind. The confused look on Jessica's face, the hesitation, and then the definitive, "We can't serve you." He had dealt with public relations disasters before, but nothing that involved something as trivial, yet oddly symbolic, as fast food. And yet, this was different. This was personal. It wasn't just about a missed meal, it was about something deeper, something more complex. As he entered his home, the familiar scent of cedarwood and leather filled the air. It was calm, soothing even, a sharp contrast to the whirlwind of thoughts crashing around in his head. He made his way to the kitchen, where his assistant, Sarah, was finishing up some paperwork at the kitchen island. Sarah had been with him for years, always sharp, always organized, and more than capable of handling the chaos that came with Elon's many ventures. "Rough day?" Sarah asked, looking up as Elon walked in. "You could say that," Elon replied, running a hand through his hair. "I had the weirdest experience at McDonald's tonight." Sarah's eyebrow quirked. "McDonald's? What happened?" Elon sighed and recounted the entire encounter, the drive-through, the refusal to serve him, and the cryptic response from the manager. Sarah listened intently, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. "That's bizarre," Sarah said after a pause. "It sounds like there's more to it than just a mistake. Have you considered that this might be intentional?" Maybe it's a publicity stunt or a deeper corporate issue. Elon shook his head, still not ready to believe that something as simple as a fast food encounter could be part of a larger plot. I don't know, Sarah. Something about it feels deliberate. I don't know what it means, but I can't shake the feeling that this is just the beginning of something bigger. Sarah nodded, sensing that Elon's mind was already spinning in 1,000 different directions. Well, whatever it is, you'll figure it out. You always do. Elon appreciated the sentiment, but tonight, the usual certainty he had about his ability to solve any problem was clouded by this strange, inexplicable event. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in the glass as he took a deep breath. There was something off about this. He could feel it in his gut. McDonald's, a company that had built its empire on service and consistency, had just turned him away for reasons that no one could explain. His thoughts drifted back to his childhood in South Africa, a time when he had felt like an outsider in almost every room he entered. Elon had never quite fit in, whether in school or social circles. His mind had always been a few steps ahead of everyone else, making it difficult for him to connect with people. But it wasn't until he moved to Canada and then the US that he truly began to carve out his own path. Even then, the feelings of being misunderstood, of being on the outside looking in, never fully left him. When Elon was younger, he had been driven by a need to prove himself to the world. It wasn't just about success, it was about validation, about being seen for who he really was, even if that meant making decisions that were unconventional or risky. He built Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company not just because he believed in those companies, but because he believed they were his way of rewriting the script of his life. But now, with a simple rejection at a fast food joint, Elon felt like a part of that script had been ripped out. His reflection was interrupted by the soft beep of his phone, pulling him back into the present. It was a text from his brother, Kimball. Hey, you alright? Heard about McDonald's. What's going on? Elon read the message, and for a brief moment, he felt the weight of his brother's concern. Kimball had always been there for him, whether it was helping with Tesla's early days or lending support during the toughest moments of his personal life. But Elon wasn't sure if he was ready to talk about this just yet. Instead, he typed out a quick response. Weird night. Don't have all the details yet. I'll fill you in soon. He hit send, then stared at the screen for a moment longer than he should have. There was something about this whole situation that gnawed at him. The McDonald's refusal wasn't just a misunderstanding or a blip in an otherwise perfect career. It felt like a sign of something larger, a reflection of the challenges he had been facing in the public eye over the past few years. Elon's life was filled with grand ambitions and high-stakes projects, but in this moment, he felt like a small cog in a much bigger machine, a machine that wasn't always friendly to outsiders like him. It was a reminder that no matter how much you achieved, no matter how many times you reshaped industries or pushed the boundaries of human knowledge, you could still be an outcast in some corners of the world. And that was exactly what this moment felt like, a rejection, not just of his request for fast food, but of him as a person. As the night wore on, Elon sat down at his desk, his thoughts still swirling. He wasn't sure where this would go, but he knew one thing for sure: McDonald's had opened a door that he couldn't ignore. And whatever lay beyond that door, he would uncover. Because Elon Musk didn't back down from challenges, no matter how big or small. He looked at his phone again and saw that Kimball had replied. Okay, keep me posted. We've got your back. Elon put the phone down, feeling the weight of his brother's words settle in his chest. It was comforting, but it also ignited something inside him. This wasn't just about a Big Mac. This was about something much bigger, and he was ready to find out what it was. Elon Musk wasn't a man who liked to waste time. He had a mission, and every moment that wasn't spent pushing the boundaries of space exploration, electric vehicles, or AI was a moment he felt he wasn't using his full potential. So when the strange rejection at McDonald's continued to haunt him the next day, it wasn't just an idle curiosity, it became a new mission. He sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters, the glass walls offering a panoramic view of the bustling city below. Elon wasn't known for working in a traditional office environment. His offices were typically filled with innovation, tech prototypes, and engineers hard at work. Today, though, there was a quiet air to the space. People moved with purpose, but no one spoke of the events that had happened just hours ago. But Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was afoot. He had already made a few calls to trusted colleagues, looking for answers. Surely, there had to be something, some explanation for what had happened. But the responses he received were as cryptic and confusing as the incident itself. His first call had been to the CEO of McDonald's, Chris Kempczynski. It was a direct line, one Elon rarely had to use, but in this situation, it felt necessary. "Elon, I'm so sorry about last night. I'm hearing rumors, but I don't have any information on what happened at the store," Chris had told him, his voice steady but strained. "I'll get to the bottom of it. Just give me some time." That response hadn't been enough for Elon. He wasn't looking for a vague apology, he needed to know what was really going on. But what had troubled him most was that Chris didn't seem shocked by the incident. He didn't ask for more details. It was as if he knew something Elon didn't. So Elon turned to a different strategy, his own network of insiders. He had spent years building relationships with some of the most powerful people in the world, not just in the tech space but across multiple industries. When you built rockets and electric cars, you tended to find yourself in some interesting circles. He reached out to a former business partner, a well-connected executive who had once worked with McDonald's in the past. The conversation was brief, but the information he gathered was alarming. "It's not about you, Elon," the former partner had said, almost whispering as if afraid someone might overhear. "This is bigger than McDonald's. There's a shift happening in the corporate world, something no one is talking about. They don't want to make you a target, but the company is in the middle of a very complicated situation. Someone higher up made this call. And it wasn't just a decision to refuse you, it's a message." The words hit Elon like a ton of bricks. A message? What kind of message could McDonald's possibly send him through something as trivial as a fast food order? And why him? Elon sat back in his chair, his mind now racing with the possibility that this could be more than just a corporate misstep. This could be the beginning of something much more insidious. His instincts told him that McDonald's wasn't acting alone. There had to be a larger agenda at play. The next morning, Elon woke up early, as he often did. His usual routine of checking emails and text messages was interrupted by the barrage of news articles that flooded his phone. Headlines screamed about the night before, the moment when McDonald's had refused to serve the billionaire entrepreneur. The stories were laced with intrigue, speculation, and countless opinions from the media. Some claimed it was a corporate mistake, others hinted at a deeper conspiracy. But none of the articles came close to the truth. Elon's gut told him that this wasn't just about a drive-through rejection. It was about the changing tides of power and influence, and he was smack in the middle of it. But what exactly was it? And who was behind it? He called his trusted advisors for a meeting, gathering a small group of his most loyal team members from Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink. They were seasoned professionals, hand-picked for their skills and ability to think beyond conventional limits. They sat around the conference table, their faces serious, as Elon paced in front of them, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Something's happening," Elon began, his voice low and measured. "I don't know exactly what it is yet, but McDonald's turning me away was a sign. A message. Whoever is behind this wants me to know they have power over me." One of the engineers, a sharp-minded woman named Lydia, raised an eyebrow. "A message? What kind of message are you talking about, Elon? This seems a bit far-fetched." Elon stopped pacing and turned to face her, his gaze piercing. "You didn't hear the way the manager spoke to me last night. It wasn't just a refusal to serve, it was calculated. This wasn't some random decision. There's a network involved here, and it's bigger than just McDonald's. Someone's pulling strings. Lydia shifted in her seat, clearly processing what Elon had said. So you think McDonald's is just a pawn in this? That they were forced to refuse you for some reason? I don't think they have a choice, Elon replied. I think McDonald's is being used to send a message to me. And if it's a message to me, then it's a message to others. We need to figure out who's behind this. The room fell silent as the gravity of Elon's words settled in. Everyone in that room knew that Elon was a force of nature, someone who didn't back down from challenges. But this wasn't a simple corporate misstep. This was a well-coordinated, high-stakes game. Finally, one of the advisors, a former FBI agent named James, spoke up. We'll need to dig deeper, Elon. You've made a lot of enemies in your time, people who don't like how you've disrupted industries. We need to look at who stands to benefit from undermining you. Who gains if you're distracted by this petty drama? Elon nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead. He had made enemies, sure. But he had also made allies in high places. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to just make a move and get away with it. He would find out who was orchestrating this, and he would make them regret it. As the meeting broke up, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about food or customer service, it was about something much bigger. Someone had sent a clear message, and it was up to him to uncover the truth. He picked up his phone, staring at the articles once more. In the world of billionaires, tech moguls, and corporate giants, it was easy to feel invincible. But this time, Elon Musk knew he wasn't just up against business rivals. This time, he was up against a shadowy force that was more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And he was ready for the fight. Elon's world had always moved fast, perhaps too fast for some. But right now, as he sat in his high-tech, minimalist office, waiting for his team to compile all the details, time seemed to slow down. His mind raced, unable to shake the nagging suspicion that something deeper was going on. The McDonald's incident wasn't just a random event, it felt like a signal, a deliberate act from an unseen hand. Whoever was behind this had a goal, and Elon Musk wasn't the type of person to sit idly by and let them win. He sat in front of his laptop, staring at the screen as his team worked diligently in the background. One by one, his trusted advisors, engineers, and analysts were pulling together every shred of information they could find. They were scouring every corner of the web, examining McDonald's internal communications, and even analyzing the social media chatter surrounding the incident. The goal was simple: find out who or what was behind this bizarre and targeted rejection. You think this is part of some larger conspiracy? Lydia, the lead engineer from SpaceX, asked as she walked into the room, her voice a mix of curiosity and skepticism. I don't think, Lydia. I know, Elon replied, his voice calm but determined. This is bigger than McDonald's. This is a message. And it's not just aimed at me. It's aimed at everyone who's ever disrupted the status quo. Lydia tilted her head, absorbing Elon's words. You really think it's that deep? I mean, McDonald's is a massive corporation, but why would they risk everything over a fast food order? I don't think McDonald's is the one risking anything, Elon said, leaning back in his chair. Someone wants me distracted. They want to destabilize me. And they've found a way to do it. McDonald's was just the tool. Lydia's eyes widened as she began to understand the gravity of Elon's words. So, you're saying this is personal. It's about you disrupting the world of technology, business, and everything in between. Elon nodded slowly. Exactly. I've made some enemies, Lydia. People who don't like the way I do things. And now, they're trying to make me take my eye off the ball. They're using McDonald's as the opening salvo in a much larger battle. Lydia let out a long breath, clearly impressed by Elon's sharp instinct. Alright, so what do we do now? Elon stood up, his movements deliberate. We go on the offensive. We start looking at who stands to benefit from disrupting me. We need to connect the dots between McDonald's, the media frenzy, and anyone else who could be pulling strings behind the scenes. Over the next several days, Elon's team worked tirelessly, diving deep into every aspect of the incident. They began analyzing McDonald's corporate structure, trying to find any irregularities. They contacted people who had worked with McDonald's in the past, former employees, business analysts, and industry insiders. They scrutinized every social media post, every news story, every hint of a pattern that could lead them to the truth. The investigation began to reveal unsettling details. It wasn't just a random act of corporate mischief. Something much more organized was taking place. Elon's team discovered that McDonald's was undergoing significant changes at the highest levels of leadership. A new board of directors had been appointed in recent months, and some of these new members had questionable connections to powerful corporate entities. These entities had historically been rivals to Elon Musk's ventures, particularly in the electric vehicle and space exploration sectors. But it wasn't just McDonald's that seemed to be involved. The media coverage surrounding the incident was eerily coordinated. The stories didn't just focus on the rejection itself but painted Elon in a negative light, questioning his credibility and even his mental state. It was clear that the media frenzy had been amplified. Someone was deliberately pushing a narrative, one designed to destabilize Elon's public image. The deeper they dug, the more connections they uncovered, each thread leading to a larger, more complex web of corporate espionage, media manipulation, and shadowy figures who had a vested interest in keeping Elon off balance. But despite all the data they had collected, one thing was still missing, a clear motive. Why McDonald's? Why now? Elon couldn't shake the feeling that they were close to uncovering something monumental, but it was just out of reach. The pieces were scattered across different industries and hidden behind layers of corporate secrecy, but if anyone could put them together, it was him. Elon had spent his life breaking down barriers, now it was time to break down this mystery. One late evening, after the team had packed up and gone home, Elon sat alone in his office. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the city outside. His mind buzzed with thoughts, questions that refused to be answered. He couldn't stop thinking about the people behind this, those who were pulling the strings, manipulating the situation to their advantage. He pulled up his encrypted communications app, the one he reserved for only the most confidential matters. There was one person he knew could help him see things from a different perspective, David, an old friend and trusted insider in the intelligence community. David had helped Elon navigate tricky situations in the past, providing insights that others couldn't. Elon quickly typed out a message. "I need your help. There's something bigger going on, and I can't figure it out on my own. Let's talk. ASAP." He hit send and leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the dark skyline. The world outside was full of distractions, but inside his mind, only one thing mattered, uncovering the truth. Minutes later, his phone buzzed. It was David. "I've been hearing whispers. Meet me tomorrow, 8 a.m. I'll have answers." Elon's heart rate quickened. He knew David didn't make statements like that without something concrete to back it up. The pieces were finally falling into place. The real reason behind McDonald's refusal to serve him was about to come into focus, and it wasn't going to be pretty. The next morning, Elon met David in a small, discreet cafe in downtown Los Angeles. It was a place they had used in the past for confidential discussions, far from the public eye. David was already sitting at a corner table, a tall man with sharp features and an air of quiet authority. He nodded as Elon sat down. "Thanks for meeting with me," Elon said, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. David didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You're dealing with something far bigger than McDonald's, Elon. Much bigger." Elon leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" David's gaze flicked around the room, ensuring no one was listening, before he spoke in a low voice. "There's a cabal of powerful corporate players who want to bring you down. They've been watching you for years, waiting for the right moment. And McDonald's was just the beginning. They've started a campaign to destabilize you, targeting your companies and your reputation. And the people behind this? They're not afraid to use anything at their disposal to bring you to your knees. Elon felt a chill run down his spine. For the first time in his life, he realized that this battle wasn't just against rival companies or media outlets, it was against an unseen force with far-reaching influence. David leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. You need to prepare yourself. This isn't just about your reputation. This is about the future of everything you've built. And it's coming for you. The news from David hit Elon like a punch to the gut. He had known for years that his work had made him enemies, rivals in the business world, people who were threatened by his innovations and the new worlds he was creating. But this felt different. A cabal. An organized effort to bring him down. It was a level of manipulation and strategy that Elon hadn't anticipated. He sat back in his chair, staring at David across the table. His mind was running at full speed, trying to process the implications of what he had just been told. David had been in the intelligence community for years. If he was saying something this serious, then it was time to pay attention. You're telling me that McDonald's wasn't just a random corporate mistake, Elon said slowly, trying to wrap his mind around it. It wasn't just a rejection over a burger. It was part of a larger plot. David nodded gravely. Exactly. And McDonald's is just one player in a much larger game. Whoever's behind this has resources, influence, and a deep understanding of how to destabilize people like you. The corporate world, the media, everything is interconnected. They know how to manipulate the system. Elon felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This wasn't just a game of business strategy, it was a full-blown power struggle, one where he was the target. The people behind this weren't just trying to hurt his reputation, they wanted to take everything he had built and bring it crashing down. What do you mean by everything is interconnected? Elon asked, his voice tight. How far does this go? David leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Elon's. You've been disrupting industries for years. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, they're not just companies. They're movements. And movements, Elon, attract attention. Especially from people who have a vested interest in keeping the status quo. There are powerful interests in the energy sector, the automotive industry, and even the space industry, all of whom see you as a threat. They can't let you succeed at the level you're aiming for. So they've started targeting you, using their resources to undermine you. Elon's mind was spinning. For years, he had been the one disrupting industries, but now, for the first time, he was being disrupted. His every move was being watched, analyzed, and potentially manipulated. So, what? McDonald's is just one part of their strategy? Elon asked, trying to connect the dots. What's the ultimate goal here? The goal is to destroy your credibility, David replied. To create enough chaos and uncertainty around your image that people start doubting you. If they can make you seem unreliable, even unhinged, then they can undermine the foundations of everything you've built. And once that happens, they'll have the power to take you down. Elon's heart rate quickened. He knew the risks of being in the spotlight, of being a pioneer in industries that were ripe for disruption. But this felt like something much more sinister. This wasn't just about competition, this was about control. And the people pulling the strings behind the scenes weren't going to stop until they had everything under their control. Back at Tesla's headquarters, Elon immediately called an emergency meeting. His top advisors and engineers gathered in the conference room, all eager to hear what David had shared. They had no idea that the situation had escalated to this level, but now that Elon had revealed the extent of the threat, there was no turning back. Elon stood at the front of the room, his mind focused, his gaze sharp. This isn't just about McDonald's turning me away. This is much bigger. There are powerful forces at play, trying to destabilize everything we've worked for. We need to prepare ourselves for what's coming. The room fell silent. Everyone in the room knew that Elon was not one to exaggerate. If he was worried, it meant that this was a serious threat. Lydia, the lead engineer, was the first to speak. So, what do we do? How do we fight back against something this massive? Elon took a deep breath. We expose them. We need to find out who's behind this and get ahead of the narrative. If we let this play out in the media, it's only going to get worse. We need to show the world that we're not backing down. We're going to take control of this situation before it takes control of us. The advisors nodded, clearly ready for action. But Elon could see the uncertainty in their eyes. This wasn't the typical challenge they faced in business. This was different. The rules had changed, and they were facing an enemy they couldn't see. We start by digging into every person who could have been involved in this. Every business connection, every board member, every person who might have influence over McDonald's and the media. We're going to pull every thread and follow it all the way to the top, Elon continued. I'm going to need everyone on this. No one leaves this room until we have a plan. As the team got to work, Elon's mind shifted to the bigger picture. He knew that the real battle was about to begin. This wasn't going to be solved by just uncovering who had made the decision to refuse him service at McDonald's. It was about exposing a system that had been rigged against him from the start, a system that would stop at nothing to maintain control. Over the next few days, Elon and his team worked tirelessly. They mapped out the connections between McDonald's and various corporate giants. They examined the media coverage, looking for patterns in the way the story was being presented. They spoke to insiders, gathering any and all information they could about the behind-the-scenes dealings in both the corporate and media worlds. The deeper they dug, the more they realized that the people who were targeting Elon had vast resources at their disposal. And they weren't going to stop at McDonald's. The investigation revealed links to powerful figures in the automotive and energy sectors, the very industries where Elon had made his most significant disruptions. There were also connections to media moguls who had long been critical of his companies. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just about business, it was about control of the future. But what troubled Elon the most was the realization that these people weren't acting on their own. They were part of a larger network, an organized effort to maintain the status quo and prevent change at all costs. The question now was, who was at the center of this network? As the investigation progressed, Elon's team uncovered a name, one that sent a chill down his spine. The name belonged to a man who had once been a powerful ally, someone Elon had trusted in the early days of Tesla. But over the years, their relationship had soured. This man had always been more interested in maintaining the old way of doing things, fighting for profits over progress. And now, it seemed, he had joined forces with the very people who wanted to see Elon fail. The depth of this conspiracy unsettled him. These weren't just businessmen, they were gatekeepers to the future. And they had played their cards carefully, using McDonald's as a way to destabilize him. That initial rejection had been the first shot fired in what was likely a much larger war. Lydia walked into the room, breaking Elon's reverie. She had been leading the effort to uncover the web of corporate connections, and from the look on her face, she had more information to share. "We've confirmed something big," Lydia said, her tone urgent. "Cross's involvement is deeper than we thought. He's not just an isolated player in this game. He's been connected to several high-profile figures in the automotive and energy sectors, and there are financial ties that go all the way to major media corporations. This isn't just a bunch of old guys mad that you're disrupting their industries. This is a well-coordinated effort." Elon stood up, moving toward the digital board that Lydia had set up in the corner of the room. The screen displayed a sprawling web of interconnected companies, names, and faces, all of which pointed back to Cross and his allies. It was a picture of influence, power, and control. "Who else is involved?" Elon asked, his voice low but filled with intent. Lydia pointed to the board. We found links to several powerful CEOs in the energy industry, including Thomas Arnold from Global Energy Corp. And Mary Hughes from Automotive Co. They've had extensive meetings with Cross over the past year. We also have ties to a few prominent media outlets, which are crucial for pushing the narrative against you. Elon's eyes narrowed. He had known about some of these players, figures who had long been rivals, individuals who had publicly criticized his efforts in the past. But he hadn't realized the extent of their coordination. This was no longer just about McDonald's. This was about controlling the flow of information, using the media as a weapon, and leveraging their power to crush innovation before it could take root. The media, huh? Elon said, tapping a finger on his chin. If they control the narrative, then they control public perception. They can shape the entire story about me, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, everything. And if they get people to believe that I'm not credible, then it's game over. Lydia nodded. Exactly. And it's happening right now. Stories are popping up in news outlets all over the world. They're painting you as erratic, unreliable, and even dangerous. You're being portrayed as someone who's out of control, someone who can't be trusted to lead these companies into the future. But what troubled Elon the most was the realization that these people weren't acting on their own. They were part of a larger network, an organized effort to maintain the status quo and prevent change at all costs. The question now was, who was at the center of this network? As the investigation progressed, Elon's team uncovered a name, one that sent a chill down his spine. The name belonged to a man who had once been a powerful ally, someone Elon had trusted in the early days of Tesla. But over the years, their relationship had soured. This man had always been more interested in maintaining the old way of doing things, fighting for profits over progress. And now, it seemed, he had joined forces with the very people who wanted to see Elon fail. The name was Daniel Cross, a former venture capitalist with deep ties to the automotive and energy sectors. Cross had always been vocal about his disdain for Elon's methods, but Elon had never taken him seriously. Now, it seemed, Cross had aligned himself with the very forces that were conspiring to take Elon down. This is just the beginning, Elon said to his team as they stared at the name on the screen. We need to expose Cross and everyone he's working with. This is going to get much worse before it gets better. As the meeting ended, Elon stood up, his resolve hardening. He knew this was the moment that would define everything. The battle wasn't just about McDonald's or a single rejection, it was about a larger fight for the future of technology, innovation, and the world. And Elon Musk wasn't about to lose. Not now. Not ever. The walls of Elon's private office felt closer than usual. His mind churned, analyzing the events of the past few days, an avalanche of information, accusations, and the growing realization that he was at the center of a conspiracy. What was once a rebellious thought, who could possibly be behind this? Had turned into a harsh, undeniable truth. There were people in the world who were willing to go to any length to halt progress, to stop the disruption he was bringing to the industries they controlled. And now, he knew who was behind it all. Daniel Cross. The name rang in Elon's mind like an ominous bell. Elon had thought he had left Cross in the past, a relic of the early days of Tesla when the road ahead was uncertain, filled with obstacles and hard choices. Cross had once been a powerful ally, an influential investor who had believed in the future of electric cars, only to become disillusioned as Elon's vision started to challenge the conventional models of industry. Over time, their differences had grown insurmountable, and they had parted ways, leaving Cross with a bitterness that had festered for years. Now, it seemed, that bitterness had manifested into something much darker. Elon leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped together as he stared at the screen before him. The research team had managed to trace Cross's connections to the larger corporate entities who had been maneuvering against him. Cross had been part of a secretive network of influential businessmen, powerful CEOs, and media moguls who had one goal: to maintain the old guard, to resist the technological and environmental changes that threatened their monopolies. The more Elon dug into this, the more he realized how widespread this network was. It wasn't just about taking down Tesla, it was about keeping the future locked in place, where they controlled the narrative and the flow of innovation. The depth of this conspiracy unsettled him. These weren't just businessmen, they were gatekeepers to the future. And they had played their cards carefully, using McDonald's as a way to destabilize him. That initial rejection had been the first shot fired in what was likely a much larger war. Lydia walked into the room, breaking Elon's reverie. She had been leading the effort to uncover the web of corporate connections, and from the look on her face, she had more information to share. "We've confirmed something big," Lydia said, her tone urgent. "Cross's involvement is deeper than we thought. He's not just an isolated player in this game. He's been connected to several high-profile figures in the automotive and energy sectors, and there are financial ties that go all the way to major media corporations. This isn't just a bunch of old guys mad that you're disrupting their industries. This is a well-coordinated effort." Elon stood up, moving toward the digital board that Lydia had set up in the corner of the room. The screen displayed a sprawling web of interconnected companies, names, and faces, all of which pointed back to Cross and his allies. It was a picture of influence, power, and control. "Who else is involved?" Elon asked, his voice low but filled with intent. Lydia pointed to the board. "We've found links to several powerful CEOs in the energy industry, including Thomas Arnold from Global Energy Corp., and Mary Hughes from Automotive Co. They've had extensive meetings with Cross over the past year. We also have ties to a few prominent media outlets, which are crucial for pushing the narrative against you." Elon's eyes narrowed. He had known about some of these players, figures who had long been rivals, individuals who had publicly criticized his efforts in the past. But he hadn't realized the extent of their coordination. This was no longer just about McDonald's. This was about controlling the flow of information, using the media as a weapon, and leveraging their power to crush innovation before it could take root. "The media, huh?" Elon said, tapping a finger on his chin. "If they control the narrative, then they control public perception. They can shape the entire story about me, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, everything. And if they get people to believe that I'm not credible, then it's game over." Lydia nodded. "Exactly. And it's happening right now. Stories are popping up in news outlets all over the world. They're painting you as erratic, unreliable, and even dangerous. You're being portrayed as someone who's out of control, someone who can't be trusted to lead these companies into the future." Elon clenched his jaw. He had been through the ringer before, facing media criticism and ridicule, but this felt different. This wasn't just about sensational headlines, it was a coordinated campaign to ruin him and everything he stood for. And they weren't going to stop until they succeeded. "But why the McDonald's incident?" Elon asked. "Why go so far as to use a fast food rejection as part of their plan?" "That's where it gets tricky," Lydia said. "The McDonald's refusal wasn't just about you personally. It was about the public reaction. They knew that you would make a statement about it, and they knew that the media would amplify that statement. What they didn't expect was how much attention it would grab. They're using this situation to push a broader narrative that you're unstable. If they can get the public to question your behavior over something as trivial as a burger, then they can start sowing doubt in your ability to lead." Elon took a deep breath, processing the information. His mind raced with possibilities, how they could take back control, how they could expose the conspiracy, and how they could turn the tables. But this wasn't just about fighting back against a few powerful individuals. This was about fighting for the future, about proving that innovation and progress were worth fighting for. "We need to make this public," Elon said, his voice firm. "We can't let this slide. If we go down quietly, we lose. If we stand up, and we expose these people for what they really are, we can turn the tide." Lydia's expression shifted to one of resolve. "How do you want to play it?" "We go straight to the media," Elon said, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "But we don't play their game. We tell the truth. We expose the cabal for what it is, a network of powerful people trying to keep the future locked in place. We're going to take back the narrative, and we're going to make sure everyone knows that nothing, not even McDonald's, is going to stop us." The days following Elon's decision to take the fight to the media were a whirlwind of activity. The team worked around the clock, compiling evidence, preparing statements, and lining up interviews with key figures who could support Elon's claims. The goal was clear: to expose the truth and wrest control of the narrative from the hands of those who had manipulated the media to turn the public against him. Elon's strategy was bold. He wasn't going to just respond to the McDonald's incident. He was going to turn it into a full-scale revelation, a public declaration that the forces conspiring against him were more dangerous than anyone realized. He would show the world that they weren't just attacking him, they were attacking progress itself. And as the world watched, Elon Musk was ready to make his stand. He wasn't going down without a fight. The media landscape shifted rapidly in the wake of Elon's decision to take a stand. It felt like a war had been declared. On one side, the powerful conglomerates and their puppet media outlets, eager to maintain control of the status quo. On the other side, Elon Musk, outspoken, unpredictable, and determined to take the fight to them. The world was watching. Elon's social media feed lit up with messages from supporters, but also from critics. The press had begun to spin the narrative further, using his public statements to paint him as an unstable billionaire trying to fight an imaginary enemy. But Elon was determined to turn this around. He knew that the truth would resonate with the public, he just had to make sure the right message got out. Sitting in his office at Tesla's headquarters, Elon was surrounded by his trusted inner circle. Lydia, David, and a few key members of his communications team had gathered around a large table, reviewing the plan for the next steps. The strategy was set: they would go public with a major exposé on the network behind the campaign to bring him down. But it wouldn't be just about McDonald's anymore. It would expose a global web of corporate influence and media manipulation. This was bigger than just one incident, it was a fight for the future. "We need to hit hard and hit first," Elon said, leaning forward. His voice was steady, but there was an intensity in his eyes. "We can't just respond to their attacks. We need to be proactive. The world needs to know exactly what's at stake here." Lydia nodded, clicking through the slides on the presentation in front of her. "We've got everything lined up. We're ready to release the information on Daniel Cross, the media connections, and the corporate links. The key will be the timing. We need to release it all at once, create a media storm that no one can ignore." Elon glanced at the screen. The timeline they had developed was tight, but they were ready. The truth was on their side, and Elon knew they had the facts to back it up. But what they were about to do wouldn't just rattle the corporate world, it would shake it to its core. "It's not just about attacking Cross or McDonald's," Elon said, his voice lowering with the weight of his words. "It's about showing the world that these people have been holding back progress. They've been controlling the narrative for far too long, and they've been doing it at the expense of the planet and future generations." David, who had remained quiet for most of the meeting, finally spoke up. "You're right. But we have to be careful. This isn't just about exposing a few bad actors. This is a system, an entire infrastructure of power. They'll come after us harder once we start exposing the truth. We need to be prepared for everything." Elon met his gaze. "We are prepared. We've got the support, the data, and the narrative. It's time to turn the tables." The next morning, the world woke up to headlines that would soon dominate the news cycle. Elon Musk wasn't backing down, he was fighting back. The first wave of the exposé hit like a bombshell. In a well-coordinated release, Tesla's communications team published a detailed report on the corporate connections between Daniel Cross, the automotive and energy sectors, and several media outlets that had been working in tandem to undermine Elon's credibility. The story began with a detailed look at Daniel Cross's role in orchestrating a network of influential business leaders and media figures, all of whom had a vested interest in slowing down Elon's progress. They weren't just corporate rivals, they were part of a larger movement to maintain the outdated systems of energy, transportation, and communication. Cross's links to Global Energy Corp and Automotive Co. were exposed, as well as his ties to high-level media executives who had worked to shape the narrative against Tesla and SpaceX. The piece was a bombshell, undeniable evidence of the behind-the-scenes manipulations that had been taking place for years. It painted a picture of a coordinated effort to suppress innovation and keep the world locked in the past. The response from the media was immediate. The fallout was swift and severe. Major outlets initially tried to downplay the story, framing it as an attack by a billionaire trying to fight back against a few bad apples. But the evidence was too overwhelming. The report, complete with internal memos, financial transactions, and documented meetings between the key players, left the media with little room to maneuver. The truth was out, and the world was starting to see the extent of the conspiracy. And then came the second part of Elon's strategy, the public statement. Elon took to Twitter, as he always did when he had something big to say. His tweet was simple, yet powerful: the truth is out there. The people who have tried to hold back progress for decades are now exposed. This fight isn't just about me, it's about all of us. We won't let the forces of the past control the future. The tweet went viral, sparking a firestorm of reactions. Supporters from around the world began rallying behind him, sharing the exposé, sending messages of solidarity, and using hashtags like #FutureOverStatusQuo and #ExposeTheGatekeepers. The response was overwhelming. For the first time, it felt like the public was waking up to the larger issue. This wasn't just a fight over one rejection at a fast food restaurant. This was about the battle for the future, a future where progress was possible, if only the old guard could be pushed aside. But the corporate world wasn't going to go down without a fight. Within hours, Daniel Cross and his allies began pushing back. Cross himself made a public statement, calling Elon's accusations wild and unfounded, dismissing the exposé as nothing more than a desperate attempt to distract from the real problems facing the world. His media connections sprang into action, with outlets attempting to paint Elon as paranoid, someone who was inventing a conspiracy to justify his business failures. The battle lines were drawn. Elon's supporters were undeterred, though. The media backlash only fueled the fire. And with every passing hour, more and more people began to see the connections for themselves. It wasn't just about the story, it was about who controlled the narrative. And for the first time, Elon was the one controlling it. Lydia watched as the social media landscape exploded with activity. "This is it," she said quietly. "We're on the right side of history." Elon nodded, his gaze fixed on the screen in front of him. "We're not just fighting for Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink. We're fighting for a future where innovation can thrive. And I won't stop until that future is realized." But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The battle was far from over. The forces aligned against him wouldn't give up easily, and now that they had been exposed, they would come after him with everything they had. The stakes were higher than ever. But Elon Musk wasn't someone who backed down from a challenge. He was ready for whatever came next. The first strike had been made. And now, the war had truly begun. The world had caught its breath. Elon's exposé had dropped like a bomb, and the media landscape had exploded in response. Headlines were changing by the minute, each one either accusing Elon of playing a dangerous game or praising his bravery in taking on a deeply entrenched network of power players. The frenzy around him wasn't just about his latest move, it was about the future itself. Would the status quo fight back? And if so, how far would they go to maintain control? Elon's office, which had always felt like a sanctuary for big ideas and innovation, now seemed like the battlefield of a new war. The tension was palpable. His team had gathered to discuss the next phase of their strategy. Every conversation felt urgent, as though the clock was ticking down to an inevitable confrontation. Lydia stood at the head of the table, her fingers flying over the laptop keyboard as she updated the media report in real time. We're seeing a lot of mixed reactions. The right-wing news outlets are painting you as a hero, while the left-wing outlets are calling this an overreaction, claiming that we're just stirring up paranoia. But what's clear is that people are paying attention now. Elon didn't flinch. The media had always been a battleground. This was no different. Good. Let them talk. But we need to control the narrative. This is no longer just about the story, we're making history here. The world is finally seeing how much power these people have, and how much they've been controlling everything behind the scenes. David, who had been monitoring the news closely, spoke up. You're right. But it's not just the media, Cross and his allies are going to retaliate. They'll try to discredit the sources, twist the facts, and they'll start pushing back hard. We need to be prepared for their counterattack. Elon knew this well. In a battle for control of the future, the enemy wouldn't go down without swinging. They had the resources, the power, and the will to fight dirty. The network Cross had built wasn't just powerful, it was dangerous. It wasn't just about a media war, it was about undermining trust, creating doubt, and making Elon out to be the villain. They wouldn't stop until they had convinced the world that his mission was nothing more than a selfish bid for dominance. They'll try to discredit us, Elon said, his voice calm. But we have something they don't. The truth. And when the truth is on your side, it's a weapon they can't fight. The door to the room opened, and in walked one of the communications team members, holding a tablet with a grim look on his face. We've got some bad news. Cross has just released a counter-report. It's an attempt to rewrite the narrative. He's calling the exposé an outrageous smear campaign, and is claiming that the evidence we provided is doctored. He's already reached out to his allies in the media, and they're picking up the story. Elon's expression darkened, but he wasn't surprised. This was exactly what he had anticipated. They had come to play hardball, and it was clear now that they wouldn't back down without a fight. Get me a copy of the report, Elon said. I want to see how they're spinning this. We need to stay ahead of the game. Lydia quickly grabbed the tablet and passed it to Elon. He read through the counter-report, which was filled with a series of well-crafted arguments designed to cast doubt on the validity of their exposé. Cross and his team had expertly framed their response, claiming the documents were fabricated, accusing Tesla of misrepresenting the facts, and even suggesting that Elon was the one trying to manipulate the media. The rebuttal was filled with carefully placed lies, half-truths, and distortions meant to make Elon look like a paranoid, self-serving billionaire. They were playing the long game, and their plan was simple, to make the world question everything. Well, Elon said, putting down the tablet, if they think this is going to stop us, they're in for a surprise. Lydia looked at him, a glint of determination in her eyes. So what's our next move? Elon paced for a moment, his mind racing through the possibilities. The counter-report was just the beginning. The attack on his character had started, and it would only escalate from here. But Elon wasn't the type to back down when things got difficult. Instead, he saw this as an opportunity to turn the tide in his favor. We're going to flip the script, Elon said, his tone firm. We'll release the full, unedited versions of the documents, everything. We'll show the world the true lengths they've gone to keep things the way they are. And we'll make sure we do it in a way that they can't spin. This is about full transparency. Lydia raised an eyebrow. You're going to give them the evidence they can attack directly? Elon nodded. Yes. But we're going to do it strategically. If we show the raw data, the memos, the meetings, the financial transactions, and then provide the full context, they won't have a leg to stand on. They're relying on spin and half-truths. But once the world sees the facts, they'll have to face the truth. David hesitated for a moment before speaking. You're setting the stage for an all-out war, Elon. They'll come after you with everything they've got. But you're not just going to fight them, you're going to expose them for what they are. It's a risky move. Elon smiled. I don't play small. If they want to make me the villain, then I'll give them a villain. But this villain is going to expose the real bad guys. They've been hiding in the shadows for too long. The next few hours were a blur. Elon and his team worked tirelessly, preparing a comprehensive release of the full documents and data to the public. It wasn't just about the expose anymore, it was about giving the public the truth in its rawest, most unfiltered form. The message was clear, they weren't going to back down. And they weren't going to let anyone control the narrative anymore. At the same time, the media continued to spin their own version of events. Cross and his allies were already trying to bury the truth, launching smear campaigns, and using their influence to distract the public. But Elon knew the truth was powerful, and it would cut through the noise. The world would see it for what it was. When the release went live, the impact was immediate. The full data was available for anyone to scrutinize. The financial transactions, the hidden meetings, and the behind-the-scenes maneuvers, all of it was laid bare for the world to see. No spin, no half-truths, just the facts. And this time, the public took notice. As the information began to spread across social media, people started to question everything they had been told. They were seeing the full extent of the conspiracy for the first time. The narrative was shifting. For the first time in a long while, it seemed like the future was within reach. Elon wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, he was fighting for the future of humanity, and that meant going to war with the forces that had held it back for so long. And this time, there was no turning back. The war for the narrative had only just begun, and already, the battleground was shifting. For weeks, the media had been playing both sides of the coin, siding with Elon one day and attacking him the next. But now, something had changed. The public was no longer just passively consuming the news. They were actively searching for the truth, and they were finding it in Elon's raw exposé. At first, it was only the die-hard fans and tech enthusiasts who rallied behind Elon. They shared the raw documents, pored over the evidence, and defended Elon against the growing army of critics who tried to discredit him. But then, as the information spread, something unexpected happened. People from all walks of life began to take notice. The more they read, the more they realized just how deep the corruption ran. Suddenly, the fight for the future wasn't just Elon's battle, it was everyone's. Elon's office was buzzing with activity as his team worked overtime to capitalize on the momentum. He sat in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him, scanning the latest news reports. It was like watching the tide change right before his eyes. The once all-powerful corporate giants were now on the defensive, scrambling to deny everything. But their denials rang hollow in the face of irrefutable evidence. Lydia, who had been in close contact with some of their most influential supporters, walked into the room, a look of determination on her face. We're seeing a shift. People are waking up to what we've been saying all along. We've gone from being the underdog to having a real shot at winning this. Elon didn't smile, but there was a glint of quiet satisfaction in his eyes. I've always believed that the truth has a way of coming out. Now it's our job to make sure it stays out there. We can't let them bury it again. David, who had been going through the analytics from their various media campaigns, spoke up. We're getting more traction with every hour that passes. Social media is on fire, people are demanding answers from McDonald's and Cross's affiliates. And we're seeing some cracks in their defenses. I think we're close to a tipping point. The phone rang, cutting through the tension in the room. Lydia picked it up, her face turning serious as she listened intently. It's the journalist from the New York Times, she said after a moment, looking at Elon. They want an exclusive interview. They're calling this a game changer, saying that if we're willing to sit down with them, it could shift the entire conversation in our favor. Elon's gaze was focused, unwavering. The media had always been an essential part of his strategy, but now, this interview could be the moment that pushed everything into the public's full consciousness. It was a chance to reach millions, to speak directly to those who were still unsure of which side to take in this battle. And it had to be done with precision. "I'll do it," Elon said firmly. "But we set the terms. We won't let them twist our words. This is our moment to make sure they understand that the future isn't for sale." The day of the interview arrived, and Elon found himself seated across from the seasoned journalist, who had covered high-profile stories for decades. The backdrop of the interview was simple, but the stakes were anything but. The cameras rolled, and the bright studio lights shone down on him as he prepared for what was about to unfold. "Mr. Musk," the journalist began, adjusting his microphone. "There's been a lot of attention around your recent exposé. Some are calling it the most significant corporate leak in years. Others, however, believe you're simply looking for attention. What do you say to that?" Elon leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "What I say is this: the truth is not something that can be ignored, no matter how powerful the people involved are. What we've uncovered is not just a small group of bad actors, it's a system that has held back progress for far too long. The evidence speaks for itself. The corruption is real." The journalist raised an eyebrow. "But you're also being criticized for creating a battle, for pitting yourself against powerful corporations. There are those who say that your actions are not just about transparency, but about personal vendettas. What's your response to that?" Elon didn't hesitate. "This isn't personal. This is about the future of humanity. It's about building a world that isn't ruled by corporate interests, a world where innovation can flourish. If that means taking on powerful people who have been keeping the world stagnant, then so be it. This is bigger than me." The journalist nodded slowly, clearly taking in his words. "But these corporations are massive. McDonald's, Global Energy, Automotive Co., they have vast resources. They won't go down easily. How do you plan to continue this fight when they are already mobilizing their defense?" Elon's expression remained stoic. "I'm not in this for a short-term win. I'm in it for the long haul. I've always known that progress comes with opposition. But I also know that history is on the side of those who push forward, not those who stand in the way. If we stand together, we can create the future we deserve." The interview continued, with the journalist asking more questions, each one probing deeper into Elon's motivations and strategies. Elon answered each one with the same unshakable conviction. The truth was no longer just a weapon, it was his armor. As the interview wrapped up, the journalist leaned back in his chair, clearly impressed. "You've made your case, Mr. Musk. Whether people agree with you or not, it's clear that you're willing to take on the biggest forces in the world. But tell me, how do you see all of this ending?" Elon's answer was simple. "With change. Real change." That evening, the interview aired, and within hours, it was being dissected by pundits across every major news outlet. Some were still skeptical, but the majority were beginning to understand the stakes. The truth had been laid bare in front of millions. And now, there was no going back. As the media frenzy continued, more cracks began to show in the defenses of the corporations that had once been untouchable. The public was demanding accountability. They were starting to ask the questions that Elon had wanted them to ask all along. By the end of the week, the tide had turned. Elon's message was resonating. It was no longer just about one man's fight against the system, it was about a movement for change. People were beginning to see the truth, and they were ready to fight for it. The battle was far from over, but Elon had taken the first major step toward winning it. The tide had turned, and the future was suddenly looking a lot brighter. The storm had been brewing for weeks, and now it was here. The corporations that had once seemed untouchable were reeling, their defenses crumbling as the truth Elon had uncovered continued to spread. But as the public began to rally behind his cause, the opposition grew more desperate. If anything, the media blitz that followed Elon's interview was just the calm before the real storm. Behind closed doors, Cross and his allies were strategizing. They couldn't afford to let this slip through their fingers. The exposé had hit them harder than anything they had ever faced, and now their backs were against the wall. They had to act, and fast. Elon was no stranger to this kind of pressure. He had spent his entire career navigating treacherous waters, from the early days of Tesla to SpaceX's toughest challenges. But this was different. The fight was no longer just about business or innovation. It was a fight for the future itself. Elon's team, too, knew what was at stake. They had expected retaliation, but the level of coordination and determination coming from their enemies was unprecedented. It was clear that they would not go down without a fight. Lydia stood by Elon's desk, reading over a stack of new reports. "They're coming after us from all sides. Cross has already started filing lawsuits against us, accusing us of defamation and conspiracy. He's using his connections to put pressure on lawmakers, and McDonald's is ramping up their PR campaign to discredit us." Elon's jaw clenched. He had anticipated the legal threats, but the PR campaign was a different kind of challenge. Cross and his allies were using every resource at their disposal to turn the tide, and now they were hitting where it hurt most: public opinion. They were spinning the narrative that Elon's actions were reckless, that he was attempting to destabilize the global economy for personal gain. They were accusing him of trying to turn the world against companies that provided jobs for millions. "They're trying to paint me as a villain," Elon said, his voice low but determined. "But that's not going to work. We have to fight fire with fire." David, who had been tracking the online response, looked up from his screen. "The narrative is shifting, but we need to push harder. We can't just rely on people to see the truth. They're throwing every piece of misinformation at us. If we don't respond, we'll lose momentum." Lydia nodded. "What if we take the fight straight to them? We need to expose their tactics for what they are: manipulation, greed, and control. If we go on the offensive, we can pull back the curtain on how deep this goes." Elon thought for a moment. He knew Lydia was right. The only way to keep the momentum was to make sure that Cross and his allies couldn't control the conversation. They needed to show the world just how far these powerful players were willing to go to protect their interests. "We need a plan," Elon said finally. "But we can't be reckless. Every move we make needs to be calculated. If we take the gloves off, we need to make sure we're hitting them where it hurts. We need to show them that they can't just bully us out of this." That night, Elon called a private meeting with his core team. The group had been through countless challenges before, but this was something else. They were fighting not just for the future of Tesla, but for the future of a world that had the potential to be more transparent, more innovative, and more equal. "We have one shot at this," Elon began, pacing the room. "We need to level the playing field. I don't care about the lawsuits, I don't care about the smear campaigns. We're going after them directly." Lydia raised an eyebrow. "You mean, publicly?" Elon nodded. "Yes. We're going to expose every detail. We're going to show people how Cross and his partners have been manipulating the system for years. This isn't about just the corporations anymore, it's about the way they've been controlling everything behind the scenes. We're going to bring it all into the light." David spoke up, a rare edge to his voice. "If we do this, we can't back down. It'll be an all-out war. They'll stop at nothing to destroy us. But if we're in this, we need to go full throttle. Are we ready for that?" Elon's eyes met David's, unwavering. "We've been ready for this since the beginning. We didn't get here by playing it safe. This is the moment where we make history. We do this right, and we can change the world." The next few days were a blur of strategic planning. Elon's team worked round the clock, compiling evidence, analyzing data, and preparing the most comprehensive exposé of corporate manipulation the world had ever seen. They had one goal: to show the world exactly how far Cross and his allies had gone to suppress progress and maintain the status quo. Elon had always believed that the truth had a way of coming out, but this time, he wasn't going to let it come out in pieces. This time, he was going to shove it into the spotlight with the force of a tidal wave. Lydia and David helped Elon craft the message. This wasn't going to be another generic report, it would be a multimedia spectacle. Video footage, leaked emails, audio recordings from inside corporate meetings, everything would be laid bare. There would be no denying it. They were going to put everything on the table. And if Cross and his allies had a problem with that, they could take it to court. But even in court, Elon knew they'd be fighting an uphill battle. The plan was set. The documents were ready. All they needed now was the perfect moment to strike. And then, as if on cue, the media frenzy around Cross and his allies erupted again. This time, however, it was different. The story wasn't just about Elon anymore. It was about what the corporations had been doing behind closed doors to protect their power. Elon's exposé went live the following day, and the world watched in stunned silence as the full truth was revealed. The backlash came swiftly. Cross's team immediately released a statement calling the new exposé a deliberate attempt to destroy innocent lives, and accused Elon of creating chaos for the sake of his own financial gain. The attack was harsh, but Elon wasn't fazed. The world, however, was reacting differently. The public had been waiting for someone to expose the truth. They had been waiting for the real story to come to light. And now that it had, they couldn't look away. For Elon, this was no longer just a battle, it was a revolution. The fight had just begun, but the game had changed. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The global reaction to Elon's exposé was nothing short of explosive. News outlets across the world ran with the story, dissecting every detail, every accusation. The once unassailable corporate giants now found themselves in the middle of a storm they couldn't control. But, as always, the media played both sides of the coin. Some outlets supported Elon, calling him a hero for transparency, while others sided with Cross and the corporations, branding Elon as a reckless troublemaker who was destabilizing the global economy. Elon's phone never stopped ringing. The media was calling, politicians were reaching out, and his supporters were demanding action. At the same time, the corporate defense machine was working overtime to counterattack. Every day, a new wave of legal threats, PR campaigns, and attempts to discredit him surfaced. But this time, Elon wasn't backing down. In a sleek conference room, the team gathered again, the weight of the moment pressing on their shoulders. The room was thick with anticipation as they prepared for what was next. The world was watching, and their next move would shape the course of history. Lydia stood at the head of the table, holding a stack of documents. The response has been swift. Cross has already met with the heads of multiple media outlets, trying to put out the fire. But this isn't just about media spin anymore. It's about the people. They're starting to see the cracks. David glanced at the latest social media stats. People are rallying. They're talking about it everywhere. It's not just tech forums anymore. This is mainstream. The hashtag truth over profit is trending globally. Elon leaned back in his chair, taking it all in. This is bigger than just us now. The corporations will fight tooth and nail to protect their interests, but they've underestimated something: the people. They're waking up to the truth. Lydia nodded. But there's still a huge divide. For every person supporting us, there's someone calling you a villain. We need to keep pushing. We can't let them turn the narrative against us. Elon stared out the window, lost in thought. The truth is powerful, but it's also fragile. If we stop now, they'll discredit everything we've built. We need to stay ahead. Keep the momentum going. The next week, Elon gave a speech that would change the trajectory of the fight. Standing at a podium in front of a packed crowd, he spoke not just as a businessman, but as a leader, as someone who had taken a stand for something larger than himself. Ladies and gentlemen, Elon began, his voice firm but sincere, this isn't just about a few bad actors in a handful of corporations. This is about all of us. This is about creating a future where innovation doesn't have to bend to the will of money and power. Where people don't have to sacrifice their dreams just to survive in a broken system. The crowd listened intently, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of cameras and smartphones. For too long, we've been told that the way things are is the way they have to be. But I'm here to tell you, we have a choice. A choice to stand up, to fight for a world where truth matters more than profits, where progress isn't stifled by greed. This fight is bigger than me. It's bigger than any corporation. It's about our future. The applause was deafening. The energy in the room was palpable as the crowd erupted into cheers. The message had hit home. Elon was no longer just a tech mogul, he was a symbol of resistance, a beacon for those who wanted change. But as the applause died down, Elon's mind was already on the next move. He knew the fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just getting started. Back in his office, Lydia had a new stack of documents in front of her. Cross is pulling out all the stops now. He's launching a counter-campaign, hitting us with everything they've got. It's going to be a war of narratives. If we don't strike back with something equally powerful, we might lose our ground. David looked over the reports. There are rumors about a smear campaign on the horizon. They're going after you personally. Trying to make it look like you've been dishonest about your intentions all along. Elon didn't flinch. Let them. The truth is on our side. We just need to make sure we're one step ahead. We need to anticipate their next move. Lydia's eyes narrowed. And we do that by staying proactive. We hit them with the full force of the truth. We've got more evidence, more documentation. It's time to take the fight straight to them. David agreed. We need to focus on the long game. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Elon smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then let's make sure we finish it. The corporate forces knew they were losing ground. They could feel the shift in public opinion, the growing swell of support for Elon and his cause. But they weren't about to go down without a fight. Their next move was coming, and it would be their most aggressive yet. One night, as Elon was working late into the hours, Lydia burst into his office, a look of urgency on her face. It's starting. Elon looked up, his expression steady. What's starting? The smear campaign. They've just released a full-on attack, calling you everything from a liar to a corporate puppet. They're trying to paint you as someone who's only in this for personal gain. Elon's eyes narrowed, but there was no hint of fear. Let them try. We know what's at stake. And we're not backing down. Lydia paced the room, the tension in her movements palpable. They're using everything, personal attacks, fabrications, even trying to manipulate your past. This is going to be ugly. Elon stood up, his resolve hardening. Good. Let it be ugly. The uglier it gets, the clearer the truth will be. We'll fight fire with fire. And we won't stop until the world knows what's really happening behind the scenes. As the smear campaign intensified, Elon's team stayed focused. They knew that if they allowed themselves to be distracted, they risked losing the support they had fought so hard to gain. The media war was on, and every move they made mattered. But this time, it wasn't just about controlling the narrative. It was about ensuring that the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, would eventually come out on top. The battle lines had been drawn. On one side, there was Elon Musk and his supporters, now emboldened by the exposure of corporate corruption and greed. On the other, the corporate juggernauts, Cross's empire and the allies who stood by him, determined to stop Elon's momentum at any cost. As the world watched, the fight was no longer just about McDonald's refusing service to Elon Musk, it had turned into something far larger. It was a clash of ideologies, of transparency versus manipulation, of truth versus power. From the moment Elon's speech had ended, the public response was swift and widespread. Protests in support of his cause erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like #TruthOverProfit and #TransparencyForTheFuture. The digital landscape was alive with debate, every social media platform flooded with passionate arguments both for and against Elon's message. But it wasn't just ordinary people who were reacting. Governments around the world began to take notice. In the United States, senators and representatives who had previously stayed silent on the issue now found themselves publicly taking sides. Some rallied behind Elon, agreeing with his assertion that large corporations had too much influence over the global economy, while others, whose financial interests aligned with the corporations, vehemently denounced him as a threat to the capitalist system. Meanwhile, the corporate world wasn't sitting idle. Cross and his allies had gone into full attack mode, using their vast resources to try and discredit Elon. They flooded the media with ads claiming that his exposé was a smear campaign, accusing him of being a self-interested entrepreneur with no regard for the common man. Behind closed doors, they worked tirelessly to ensure that the narrative was framed in a way that would benefit them. They knew that if they could turn the tide of public opinion, they could eventually force Elon into submission. But Elon had other plans. In the days following the release of his speech, Elon's team knew they had to stay on the offensive. He couldn't afford to wait for the next move from Cross and his corporate allies, they had to push back now. To do so, they decided to leverage the very platform that had made Elon a household name, social media. Lydia, ever the strategist, sat down with Elon in their headquarters, carefully going over their plan. "We've seen how quickly the public has rallied behind us," she said, pointing at the real-time analytics on her screen. "But we're still playing defense. If we want to control the narrative, we need to go even bigger." Elon leaned forward. "What's your plan?" "We need to use a new tactic, something that will put them on the back foot. We'll use a live stream to expose them, take their best shots head-on, and turn their attacks into opportunities for transparency. Think of it as a public interrogation of their lies. We invite the press, make it public, and force them to watch as we dismantle their tactics." David added, "And we'll bring in independent experts, journalists, whistleblowers, anyone who can validate our claims. The more we bring to the table, the harder it will be for them to deny the truth." Elon's eyes lit up. "Let's do it. It's time to shine a spotlight on this entire system." The following week, the live stream event was set up, a massive digital town hall, streamed worldwide for all to see. Elon Musk, surrounded by his key allies, would take center stage and dissect every piece of evidence they had gathered. They planned to expose not just Cross's tactics, but the entire corrupt web that spanned industries and governments. It would be a bold move, an unprecedented move, but it was the only one that would truly make an impact. As the event drew closer, the tension among Elon's team was palpable. Every member knew that this was their moment. The entire world would be watching. If they failed, it would be a devastating blow. But if they succeeded, they could tip the scales in their favor, and change the course of history. Elon, ever the risk-taker, was ready. He had faced criticism, hate, and even personal attacks before, but this was different. This was the moment when he could show the world the truth. No more whispers in back rooms, no more subtle insinuations. It was time to lay it all bare. The day of the live stream event arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The studio was set, the cameras rolling. Elon, Lydia, David, and their key advisors took their places on stage, a large screen behind them ready to display documents, videos, and audio clips that would expose the corruption at the heart of the corporate world. Elon stepped up to the microphone, his gaze intense but calm. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, thank you for joining us today. We stand here not as individuals, but as part of a global movement, a movement that is seeking the truth. For too long, the powerful few have controlled the narrative, and it's time to take back control. The live stream audience was enormous. Millions of viewers from all corners of the world were tuning in, watching as Elon began to outline the findings of his investigation. He played recordings of confidential meetings, showing the orchestrated campaigns to manipulate the media, influence governments, and keep the public in the dark. Cross's face appeared on the screen, red-faced and angry, caught in one of the most damaging clips. If we let this truth out, his voice was heard saying, we'll lose everything. We can't afford to let people know what we're really doing. The audience gasped. The evidence was undeniable. It was no longer just Elon's word against theirs. It was a full-on revelation that would change the way people viewed their corporate overlords forever. As the stream continued, the corporate backlash began in real time. The first wave of attacks came from Cross's allies, attempting to turn the tide by calling the stream a publicity stunt and accusing Elon of having ulterior motives. They called it self-serving and divisive, but the damage was already done. People were waking up to the reality of what had been happening behind closed doors for far too long. The response from the public was immediate. Hashtags like #TruthOverProfit and #ExposeTheCorruption trended on social media. Celebrities, activists, and even politicians shared their support for Elon's cause. The conversation was changing. What had once been a battle for public opinion was now a fight for the soul of the world's most powerful institutions. Cross wasn't giving up. He had his lawyers ready, his media contacts primed, and the pressure was mounting. But Elon had one thing that Cross didn't have, the support of millions of people who had finally seen the light. The world was responding. People were speaking out. They were standing with Elon Musk, not just because of his status, but because of the message he was sending. And now, with the world watching, the stage was set for the final confrontation. The question wasn't whether the corporations would fight back, they already were. The question was whether they could defeat the truth that was now in the open for all to see. The battle for the future had begun. And Elon Musk was ready to see it through. The world was in chaos. The events of the past few weeks had led to a rapid shift in public perception, and it wasn't just the tech world feeling the heat. The corporate giants, who had long believed themselves untouchable, were now on the defensive. Elon Musk's live stream had done the unthinkable, it had exposed the underbelly of an entire industry. The media landscape had changed, and the power dynamics were starting to shift. But this was only the beginning. In the aftermath of the live stream event, something unexpected happened. People, from everyday citizens to industry insiders, started coming forward. Whistleblowers who had previously been afraid to speak out now saw an opportunity to tell their stories. It wasn't just about McDonald's or Cross anymore. It was about a deep-rooted system that had been manipulating the public for decades. In a series of interviews, former executives from various corporations began talking about the lengths to which their companies had gone to suppress innovation and maintain control over the market. One former McDonald's employee claimed that the company's refusal to serve Elon Musk wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern of blocking competitors, manipulating supply chains, and using their immense influence to squash anyone who dared challenge their dominance. The news outlets were flooded with testimonies and new evidence, all supporting Elon's narrative. What had once seemed like a lone crusade against the giants had now become a full-blown movement. But Elon knew this wasn't the time to celebrate. It was time to go on the offensive. In the boardroom of Elon's headquarters, Lydia sat across from him, papers scattered across the table. "We have all this new evidence," she said, pointing to the mountain of reports and interviews that had come in. "This is the ammunition we need to finish this." Elon rubbed his temples. "It's not enough. We can't just expose them. We have to make them answer for what they've done. We need to hit them where it hurts." David, who had been silently analyzing the reports, spoke up. "We've been fighting in the media, but it's time to take this to the next level. We need a strategy that's not just about the truth, it's about making them pay for their actions." Elon looked up, his eyes narrowing with determination. "What do you have in mind?" David smiled, a hint of mischief in his expression. "We go after their assets. We start a legal war. Lawsuits. Probes. Investigations. We use their own tactics against them. We expose everything, but we also force them to defend every single accusation. We make them feel the pressure. Let's hit them where it really hurts, their wallets." Lydia nodded. "I agree. We have the public on our side. Now we need to take legal action to ensure they're held accountable." Elon's face hardened as he considered the plan. This wasn't just about exposing corporate corruption anymore. It was about dismantling the system, piece by piece. The legal battle began with a single, calculated move, a class action lawsuit against McDonald's and Cross Corporation. The lawsuit was filed by Elon Musk himself, on behalf of thousands of people who had been victims of corporate manipulation. The charges were clear: fraud, market manipulation, and conspiracy. The scope of the lawsuit was vast, spanning multiple industries, multiple countries. It wasn't just about a refusal to serve Elon Musk at a fast food restaurant. It was about a pattern of behavior that had affected millions of consumers and businesses. The media was abuzz with the news of the lawsuit. Legal experts weighed in, some calling it a bold move that could change the landscape of corporate law forever, while others dismissed it as an empty threat. But what no one expected was the swift and overwhelming response from the public. The hashtag Justice for Musk started trending once again, and millions of people began voicing their support for Elon's fight. In cities across the globe, people were rallying outside McDonald's locations, demanding accountability. What started as a viral protest had now turned into a full-scale global movement. Elon had become more than a tech mogul, he was a symbol of resistance. As the lawsuit progressed, Cross Corporation did everything in its power to fight back. They brought in high-powered lawyers, launched counterattacks in the media, and used every legal loophole they could find to delay the process. But the weight of public opinion was against them. The more they fought, the more their true nature was exposed. Documents were leaked, revealing that Cross had personally directed attacks on Elon Musk's businesses in the past, using underhanded tactics to cripple his ventures. This wasn't just corporate rivalry, it was corporate warfare. But the legal pressure was mounting. Elon's legal team, armed with an army of investigators, began to dig deeper into Cross's finances, uncovering a vast network of offshore accounts, hidden assets, and shady deals that had been designed to evade taxes and launder money. The revelations were shocking. Cross wasn't just a corporate titan, he was a criminal mastermind, using his empire to amass wealth at the expense of the public. The world was watching as the case unfolded, and every new revelation pushed Elon's cause forward. The tide was turning in his favor. The corporations were losing their grip, and the truth was spreading like wildfire. One day, as Elon sat in his office, staring at the mounting piles of legal documents, Lydia walked in, a smile spreading across her face. "We've got them on the ropes." Elon looked up, his eyes tired but resolute. "How so?" "They're getting desperate," Lydia replied. "The latest leaks have forced Cross's company into a corner. They're scrambling to contain the damage. Their stock prices are plummeting, and investors are starting to panic." David entered the room, a look of satisfaction on his face. "It's happening. The boardrooms are in chaos. Cross is being investigated for fraud, and his credibility is shot. We've got them exactly where we want them." Elon leaned back in his chair, taking it all in. The battle had been long, but it was finally reaching its peak. The corporations had underestimated him, and now they were paying the price. But Elon knew better than to get complacent. The war was far from over. Cross may have been on the ropes, but he was still a formidable opponent. And as much as Elon wanted to enjoy the victory, he knew that he couldn't stop until he had completely dismantled the system that had been oppressing millions for decades. As the case continued to develop, one thing was becoming clear: the corporations were fighting not just for their wealth, but for their very existence. And Elon Musk, the man they had once dismissed as a nuisance, was now their worst nightmare. The world was changing. And the turning point had arrived. The pressure was mounting on both sides. The battle between Elon Musk and Cross Corporation had escalated into a full-scale war, with each new revelation adding fuel to the fire. Lawsuits, media wars, leaks, and protests, everything was on the table now. The world had never seen anything quite like it. It wasn't just a corporate rivalry anymore, it was a battle for the future of capitalism, transparency, and accountability. Elon's team had been relentless in their pursuit of justice. Lydia, David, and the entire legal team worked around the clock, gathering evidence and securing testimonies. The public was behind them, but so was something much bigger: the truth. Every piece of evidence they uncovered further revealed the corruption that had been festering within Cross Corporation for decades. But just as things seemed to be shifting in their favor, the first major blow came from an unexpected direction: a coordinated attack on Elon's credibility. Cross's team had managed to find a few old, seemingly innocuous tweets and business dealings from Elon's past and were now using them to discredit him. The media, ever hungry for drama, latched onto the narrative. Headlines blared: "Is Elon Musk hiding something?" and "The Dark Side of Elon Musk's Empire." Elon's supporters were taken aback. Was this the beginning of the end for the movement? Was it possible that, despite all the progress, Elon was now being cornered? For the first time in this long battle, the tide felt uncertain. Elon sat in his office, his eyes fixed on the television screen as the news cycle played out the latest attack. Lydia and David stood behind him, their faces tense. "This is bad," Lydia said quietly. "They're trying to turn the narrative around, make it about you rather than them." Elon didn't flinch. "They can try, but they'll fail." David leaned forward, his voice urgent. "We need to get ahead of this, Elon. If we let them define the narrative, it's over." Elon stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. He could feel the weight of the moment: the entire world was watching, waiting to see which side would emerge victorious. "I've been through worse," Elon said, his voice steady but firm. "And I'm not going to back down now. The truth is on our side. We just need to show the world that." Lydia nodded. "We've already shown them. But now, it's time for the final blow. We need something big, something that'll leave no room for doubt." The team gathered in their strategy room, their eyes locked on the task ahead. It was time to take the fight to Cross directly. Elon knew they had to act fast. The world was already on edge, and if they didn't strike soon, Cross would successfully turn the tide. David cleared his throat. "I've been working on something. It's risky, but it could be the key to ending this once and for all." Lydia raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" David opened his laptop and pulled up a set of documents. Cross Corporation has been laundering money through a series of offshore accounts. We've already uncovered some of the transactions, but there's more. If we can get our hands on the master ledger, everything from their financial dealings, hidden funds, and illicit transactions, we can bury them. Elon's interest peaked. "How do we get it?" David smirked. "I know someone who works on the inside. A whistleblower with direct access to Cross's accounts. We've been in contact for a while. If we can arrange a secure handoff, we'll have everything we need." The room was silent for a moment as everyone processed the gravity of what was being proposed. If they pulled this off, it would be the ultimate coup. But if they failed? Elon was the first to speak. "Make it happen. This is our chance." The plan was set in motion. For weeks, Elon's team had been working behind the scenes to get the ledger. Every detail had been meticulously planned out: secure channels, encrypted communications, backup plans in case anything went wrong. And then, one fateful evening, the call came. It was time. Lydia, David, and a small team of trusted allies met in a secure location. The air was thick with tension as they waited for the whistleblower to arrive. Hours passed in silence. The anticipation was almost unbearable. And then, at long last, the door opened. The whistleblower, a former high-ranking executive from Cross Corporation, stepped inside, holding a flash drive in his hand. He was nervous, sweating, but determined. "I'm giving you everything," he said, his voice shaking. "It's all there. The proof of everything Cross has done. The offshore accounts, the illegal deals, the cover-ups. It's all in this file." Lydia took the drive carefully, a mixture of excitement and fear washing over her. They had what they needed. The final piece of the puzzle was in their hands. The next few hours were a blur. Lydia and David immediately began sifting through the data on the flash drive. The documents were a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, more than they could have ever hoped for. They had not only proof of Cross's financial malfeasance but also direct links to bribery, government influence, and systemic abuse of power. The team's plan was clear: they would release the full ledger to the public in one massive expose. The world would see everything. There would be no way for Cross to deny it. The truth would be so overwhelming that no amount of PR spin could cover it up. As the team worked through the night, preparing the evidence for release, Elon sat quietly in his office, deep in thought. This was the moment he had been waiting for. It wasn't just about proving his point anymore, it was about holding those who had exploited the system accountable. It was about creating a new world, a world built on transparency, fairness, and honesty. The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, Elon Musk stood before the cameras once again, ready to make the final announcement. His face was calm, but there was a fire in his eyes. He knew this was the moment that would define everything. "Today," Elon began, "we release the truth. The truth about the people who have controlled our world for too long. The truth about the corporations that have manipulated governments, destroyed businesses, and hurt millions. This is just the beginning." With that, the team hit the button. The full, unredacted ledger was released to the public, and within moments, it was everywhere. News outlets, social media platforms, and independent journalists were all scrambling to process the massive data dump. The world was about to see Cross for what it truly was: a corrupt, manipulative, and criminal empire. Within hours, the response was overwhelming. The stock market trembled as Cross Corporation's value plummeted. Governments across the globe began calling for investigations. Public opinion had shifted dramatically. Cross, once untouchable, was now exposed for all to see. Elon had won. But the battle was far from over. This was only the beginning. The fight for transparency and justice was a long one, and Elon knew it wouldn't be easy. But with the truth now out there was no turning back. As Elon stood there, watching the chaos unfold, a sense of calm washed over him. They had done it. The world would never be the same again. And as the final blow landed on Cross Corporation, Elon Musk looked forward to the future, a future where truth and transparency would no longer be optional. It would be the new foundation upon which the world would build. The dust had barely settled after the massive leak. The full impact of Elon Musk's fight against Cross Corporation was still reverberating throughout the business world, political arenas, and media. The revelations were seismic, shaking the very foundation of the corporate giants who once ruled with an iron fist. The stock market had seen its sharpest drop in years as Cross's empire crumbled. Lawsuits were piling up, regulatory bodies worldwide were opening investigations, and for the first time in decades, the public was beginning to demand real accountability. But despite the chaos, one thing was certain: Elon Musk had irrevocably changed the game. The legal battles were now in full swing. Elon's team had been preparing for this moment for months, but even they had underestimated the sheer magnitude of what was about to unfold. Cross Corporation wasn't going to go down without a fight. The company's leadership, now cornered and with nowhere to turn, had started firing back, accusing Elon of orchestrating a conspiracy, of manipulating the public to rally against them, and of using illegal means to bring down the corporation. The accusations were wild, but in the world of corporate warfare, nothing was ever truly off the table. Elon sat at his desk, reviewing the latest news articles. The media storm was intense, with pundits arguing whether this would be remembered as a watershed moment for corporate accountability or just another scandal in the endless churn of modern business. The reality was far more complex. How are the teams doing with the lawsuits? Elon asked, his voice steady but filled with underlying tension. Lydia leaned over the back of his chair, pointing to her laptop screen. We've got a solid legal team on the front lines, but the defense is digging in. They've hired top-tier lawyers to delay everything. Cross is trying to buy time, hoping the public will lose interest before the full ramifications hit. But we're pushing hard. Every document, every interview, they're all stacking up. It's just a matter of time before the courts see them for what they are. David entered the room, his face as intense as ever. The global investigations are growing. Every major government has started their own probes into Cross. I've just heard that we're going to see criminal charges being filed soon, against Cross himself, possibly even for racketeering. Elon's lips curled into a faint smile. That's a start. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. What had once been a personal vendetta against a corporate behemoth had evolved into a global movement. Elon had become an unlikely symbol of resistance, not just against corporate greed, but against a system that had long been rigged to favor the powerful few. His actions had sparked conversations in boardrooms, university classrooms, and street corners. People were finally asking the tough questions: why had we allowed corporations to operate without transparency? Why had we given these entities so much power, with little accountability? At the same time, the media frenzy had reached new heights. News outlets were reporting on every twist and turn of the battle. The most unexpected development was the wave of public support for Elon. What had begun as a solitary stand had grown into a massive social movement. Hashtags like #TruthOverProfit and #CorporateRevolution were flooding social media, and a new generation of activists had emerged, rallying behind Elon's cause. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As Elon and his team pushed forward, more dark secrets about Cross's corporate operations were coming to light, secrets that went deeper and were even more disturbing than anyone had expected. Cross Corporation wasn't just manipulating markets, they were involved in bribery, espionage, and even political influence on a global scale. The revelations were shocking, and public opinion about the corporation soured even further. In one particularly damning piece of evidence, it was revealed that Cross Corporation had been secretly influencing elections in several countries, using its vast wealth to manipulate outcomes in favor of politicians who would protect their interests. This wasn't just a corporate scandal anymore, this was an international crisis. But as Cross's empire continued to crumble, new questions arose. Could the justice system really hold someone like Cross accountable? Could Elon, a businessman with his own controversial history, continue to be the public face of this revolution? And most importantly, what would be the long-term implications of this unprecedented battle? Elon had a meeting scheduled with one of his key allies, a tech mogul named Emily, who had supported him throughout the entire ordeal. Emily had been one of the first to lend her voice to the cause, using her platform to amplify Elon's message. Now, she was ready to take things a step further. I've been thinking, Emily said, taking a seat across from Elon in his office. What you've started here, it's bigger than just exposing corruption. It's about building something better. What if we take this fight to the next level? What if we start a new kind of business? One that operates on transparency and accountability? Elon raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Go on. Emily leaned in, her eyes bright with excitement. I mean, we've proven that there's a massive hunger for change. People are tired of the status quo. What if we build a new company, one that does things differently? A company that's not just about making money but about improving the world. We can bring together the best minds from all over and create something that's completely transparent, no secrets, no manipulation. We'd lead by example. Elon sat back, considering her proposal. It's ambitious, but it could work. The public needs more than just a fight, they need a future. They need something to believe in. The idea of creating a new kind of company began to take shape. Elon, Emily, and a group of other influential figures in the tech and business world started laying the groundwork for what would become the first true business revolution of the 21st century. They called it the Transparent Corporation, and it would be the antithesis of everything that Cross and other corporate giants represented. The concept was simple: full transparency. Every transaction, every decision, every hire, and every dollar spent would be visible to the public. No hidden deals. No backroom negotiations. Just a commitment to doing business ethically and for the benefit of society as a whole. This wasn't just a business model, it was a statement. It was a rejection of the corporate greed and manipulation that had defined the business world for so long. As Elon began to rally the best and brightest to his cause, the media followed suit. The Transparent Corporation quickly became the most talked about business venture in the world. Investors, activists, and everyday citizens were all eager to see how this bold new company would operate. Would it succeed where others had failed? Or would it crumble under the immense pressure of maintaining absolute transparency? But there was still one looming question hanging in the air: would Elon Musk, the man who had single-handedly exposed the corporate world's darkest secrets, be able to build something that could last? One thing was clear: Elon Musk had ignited a fire that could not be extinguished. The battle against Cross Corporation had only been the beginning. The real work was just starting, and Elon knew that the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But he was ready. The world had changed, and he was determined to ensure that it would never go back to the way it was. Elon Musk stood in front of a small, intimate crowd of investors, tech experts, and journalists. The room was buzzing with anticipation as the world eagerly awaited the official launch of the Transparent Corporation. It had been months of planning, discussions, and perfecting every detail, but now, the moment had arrived. It was no longer just an idea. It was real. The press conference had been carefully orchestrated, but even Elon could feel the weight of the moment. This was bigger than any business venture he'd ever undertaken. It wasn't just about building a successful company, it was about building a new kind of company, one that would challenge everything the world had known about corporate greed and secrecy. He stepped up to the podium, his face calm but determined. The cameras clicked, the room fell silent, and all eyes were on him. "Thank you for being here today," Elon began, his voice steady. "We're here to launch something new, a company built on transparency. A company that will be different from anything the world has ever seen." There was a murmur in the room. Elon could feel the skepticism, the uncertainty. People had seen ambitious business ventures come and go, but this was something entirely new. Could a company built on total openness really work? Would people actually trust it? We've all seen how big corporations have failed us. They've hidden the truth, manipulated the system, and put their profit over everything else, over the people, over the planet. And we've reached a point where enough is enough, Elon continued. The Transparent Corporation will operate in a way that has never been done before. Every decision we make will be open for the public to see. Every financial transaction, every policy, every partnership, open, honest, and transparent. A reporter raised their hand, clearly eager to challenge Elon's vision. "Mr. Musk, isn't that a bit idealistic? There are so many variables at play in running a company. How can you ensure transparency in all areas of business without compromising the success of the company itself?" Elon smiled slightly, knowing this question was coming. That's the challenge, isn't it? He said. But that's exactly why we need to do this. Success doesn't have to come at the cost of ethics. We've built a model where every employee, every shareholder, and every customer will have access to everything: real-time financials, company decisions, product developments, supply chains. You'll know exactly where your money is going, how it's being spent, and what impact it's having. The crowd shifted. Elon could see the skepticism on some faces, but there was something else there, too, a glimmer of hope. A desire for something different, something more. We're not just changing the way we do business, Elon added, his voice rising with conviction. We're changing the way the world views business. We're proving that transparency isn't just possible, it's necessary. And in doing so, we're setting a new standard. A standard that every company, every industry, every person who wants to do business in the future will need to meet. The press conference ended with mixed reactions. Some reporters were skeptical, others intrigued, but the general feeling was one of cautious optimism. There was no denying the boldness of Elon's vision, but whether it would succeed remained to be seen. Back in the office, Elon met with his core team, Lydia, David, and Emily, who had all been instrumental in bringing the idea to life. They gathered around a large conference table, surrounded by laptops, tablets, and a wall full of notes and charts. Well, Lydia said, breaking the silence, that was certainly interesting. I think it went well, David added. The message is out there now. We just need to keep pushing, keep proving that we're serious. Elon leaned back in his chair, his mind already racing ahead. Now the real work begins. We have to show people that transparency isn't just a slogan, it's a way of life. Emily nodded. We've set the tone with the launch, but it's going to take time for people to fully understand and trust what we're doing. We're not just fighting Cross anymore. We're fighting the entire status quo. Elon's gaze hardened. And that's exactly why this has to work. If we succeed, we can change everything. If we fail, well, we won't. In the following weeks, the Transparent Corporation hit the ground running. The initial buzz from the launch had brought in a flood of new investors, eager to be part of something revolutionary. But despite the overwhelming support, there were challenges. The first major hurdle came in the form of competitors, businesses that operated in the shadows, without the same level of transparency Elon was promising. These companies, many of which had been exposed during the battle with Cross, weren't going to just sit back and let a new player take the stage without a fight. Elon's team had prepared for this. Lydia had spearheaded a communication strategy, crafting messages that emphasized the long-term benefits of transparency over short-term profits. David had been building relationships with regulators and political leaders, ensuring that the Transparent Corporation stayed ahead of any legal challenges. Emily had begun networking with potential partners, forging alliances with like-minded companies and organizations. But none of it was easy. The status quo wasn't going to change overnight, and the corporate giants who had thrived in secrecy weren't going to let Elon's company rise without a fight. In one particularly aggressive move, a group of powerful investors who had ties to Cross Corporation began spreading negative rumors about the Transparent Corporation. They questioned whether the company could really maintain its commitment to transparency, suggesting that such an approach would eventually lead to financial instability. Elon wasn't surprised by the attack. In fact, he had expected it. But it didn't make the sting any less sharp. But that promise came with a price. The road ahead would be filled with obstacles, and not everyone would support what he was trying to do. But for Elon, that was part of the journey. He had been through countless challenges before, this was just another one to overcome. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. The world was changing, and he was ready to be part of that change. And as the first rays of dawn began to break over the horizon, Elon Musk knew that this was only the beginning. The weeks following the launch of the Transparent Corporation had been nothing short of chaotic. What was meant to be a revolutionary step in the business world quickly morphed into an all-out battle. As Elon Musk and his team pushed forward with their mission of transparency, they found themselves facing immense resistance, not just from the corporate world, but from government entities, powerful investors, and even their own customers, who were increasingly uncertain about the potential fallout. Elon had anticipated some level of pushback. After all, changing the system always rattles those in power. But the scale of the resistance was growing more intense by the day. It was early morning when Elon received a phone call from Lydia. The anxiety in her voice was unmistakable. "Elon, you need to see this," Lydia said urgently. "It's all over the news. We're getting hit with a massive smear campaign." Elon felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had been expecting something like this, but the timing was troubling. Just as the company was gaining traction, this could be a huge setback. He grabbed his tablet and pulled up the latest headlines. The articles and news reports were flooding the internet, each one carrying the same story: the transparent corporation was in crisis. Anonymous whistleblowers had come forward, alleging that the company had secretly broken its own transparency rules. The media frenzy was escalating quickly, with some outlets even suggesting that Elon's grand vision was nothing more than a smokescreen for an elaborate corporate ploy. "This can't be right," Elon muttered to himself, scanning the articles. "We're being framed." Lydia continued. "It's worse than that. The sources are credible, employees, people who have access to our internal systems. They're saying that the transparency was only partial. They're calling us hypocrites." Elon's frustration grew. "What's our next move? We need to get ahead of this before it spirals out of control. I'm gathering our communications team now. We'll need a statement, but we also need to address this with full transparency. No half measures." Elon sighed, leaning back in his chair. This was the last thing they needed. The company had barely begun to solidify its foundation, and now they were facing a PR nightmare. But he knew that they couldn't afford to back down. The stakes were higher than ever. "All right," Elon said, determination creeping into his voice. "Let's deal with this head-on." The next 24 hours were a blur. Elon and his team worked tirelessly to prepare a response to the allegations. Lydia took the lead on crafting a statement that would directly address the claims of hypocrisy while reaffirming the company's commitment to full transparency. Emily and David were focused on damage control, reaching out to key partners and investors to assure them that the transparent corporation had not wavered from its core principles. The press conference they organized was a high-stakes moment. Elon had no choice but to step forward and confront the allegations head-on. The entire world was watching, and any misstep could spell disaster for the young company. At the press conference, the room was packed with reporters, all eager for answers. The tension in the air was palpable. Elon stood at the podium, his face a picture of calm, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the situation. "Thank you for joining us today," Elon began, his voice steady. "We've heard the accusations, and we're here to address them openly and honestly. First and foremost, let me make one thing clear: the transparent corporation has always strived to operate with transparency and integrity. If there have been mistakes, we will own them. We will fix them." A reporter quickly interjected. "But how can you expect people to trust your company when you've been accused of hiding information from the public? Isn't that the very thing you said you were trying to fight against?" Elon paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Transparency isn't just about showing what's convenient or easy. It's about showing everything, even the parts we're not proud of. Yes, there have been errors. Yes, some of our internal processes fell short of our ideals. But we are committed to fixing those issues, and we are going to do so publicly, for everyone to see. Another reporter raised their hand. "How do you plan to regain public trust after this scandal?" Elon's eyes narrowed slightly. "We will be accountable for our mistakes, but we're also going to take immediate action. We're implementing a third-party audit of our systems, so the public can see firsthand that we're doing everything we promised. And we're going to make the results of that audit available to everyone." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Elon's words hanging in the air. He continued, "We've always said that the journey to true transparency is difficult. We're not perfect, and we never claimed to be. But we will keep working until we get it right. And that's the difference. We don't run away from our failures, we learn from them, and we keep moving forward." The conference ended on a tense note, but Elon's message had been clear: the transparent corporation was not backing down. They would face the criticisms, own their mistakes, and continue their mission to change the business world. It was a bold statement, one that would either rally supporters or push them away. But Elon wasn't interested in half measures. In the following days, the response from the public and the media was mixed. Some were convinced by Elon's honesty and commitment to fixing the issues, while others were skeptical, believing that this was just another corporate gimmick. But one thing was certain: the controversy had elevated the conversation surrounding corporate transparency to a whole new level. It was no longer just about Elon Musk, it was about the future of business as a whole. But the battle wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. Despite the backlash, the transparent corporation continued to press on. Behind the scenes, Elon and his team were making significant changes. The third-party audit was underway, and the results would be made public as promised. They also began to implement new systems designed to ensure that no further discrepancies would occur. Every decision, every move, would be scrutinized, not just by the public, but by their own internal team. Elon knew that there was no going back now. They had put themselves on a path that would either lead to great success or catastrophic failure. But if there was one thing Elon Musk had never been afraid of, it was risk. He had faced impossible odds before, and he had always found a way to overcome them. This time would be no different. As the days passed, the scrutiny only intensified. But there were moments when the tide began to turn. Support for the transparent corporation slowly began to build again, as people began to see that the company was walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And for Elon, that was all that mattered. The aftermath of the press conference had been a roller coaster for Elon Musk and the transparent corporation. While there were still those who doubted the company's authenticity, many began to rally behind the idea of a corporation that not only admitted to its mistakes but actively worked to correct them. Elon's commitment to transparency, even in the face of overwhelming pressure, seemed to be slowly winning over the public. Yet, just when things were beginning to calm down and the company was starting to regain its footing, a new wave of turmoil arrived, and it came from within. Elon sat in his office late one evening, reflecting on the progress they'd made since the scandal. The third-party audit results had been released, and while they hadn't been perfect, they had shown that the transparent corporation was making genuine strides to meet its ambitious goals. The public had been surprisingly receptive, and investors had begun to re-engage, restoring a sense of hope within the team. But then, the phone call came. "Mr. Musk," Lydia's voice was strained over the line. "We've got a problem. One of our own is involved." Elon's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "It's David," Lydia said, her voice low. "He's been leaking sensitive information to a competitor." The room seemed to close in on Elon. David? One of the founding members of the Transparent Corporation, the man who had helped build their relationships with investors, political figures, and key stakeholders. How could this happen? Elon's thoughts raced, trying to process the information. "Are you sure?" "I've confirmed it," Lydia replied. "We've got evidence, and it's bad. He's been meeting with some of Cross's executives in private. There's more. We found communications between him and one of their top strategists. He's been feeding them intel about our next big move." Elon stood up, pacing the room. Betrayal was one thing he couldn't stand, but this was worse. The very foundation of what they were building had been shaken. If David was willing to betray them, how could anyone else be trusted? I'll deal with this, Elon said, his voice tight. Where is he? He's on his way in. I told him we needed to have a meeting. Elon took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he knew would be one of the hardest conversations of his life. David had been his ally, his confidant, but now he was the very thing Elon feared most, a traitor. David arrived at the office a few minutes later, looking as calm and collected as ever. His neatly pressed suit and confident stride gave no indication that anything was amiss, but Elon knew better. Lydia was already in the room, her arms crossed as she stood by the door, watching the interaction carefully. David, Elon said, his voice colder than usual, we need to talk. David raised an eyebrow. What's going on, Elon? You sound serious. Don't play dumb with me, Elon replied. We know what you've been doing. The meetings with Cross. The leaks. David's face faltered, but only for a split second. He recovered quickly, his expression shifting to one of defiance. I don't know what you're talking about. Lydia stepped forward, holding up a folder. These are the email chains, the documents, the timestamps. You can't deny it, David. David's eyes flicked to the papers, and for the first time, there was a hint of nervousness. But he quickly masked it with a smirk. You don't get it, do you, Elon? This company, this whole transparent nonsense, it's not sustainable. You're naive if you think you can change an entire system with honesty and openness. Cross understands that. They're playing the game right. They know how to win. Elon's jaw clenched. So this was about money? You sold us out for a bigger payday? It's not about the money, David shot back, his voice suddenly cold. It's about power. You might think you can change the world, but you're fooling yourself. I've been in this game long enough to know that change doesn't happen through ideals. It happens through influence. And you've got none of that. Cross has it. I made the smart choice. Elon felt a wave of anger wash over him. He had trusted David, more than anyone else in the company. This betrayal wasn't just about business, it was personal. David was someone he had counted on, someone who had believed in the same mission, and now, all of that was crumbling before him. Get out, Elon said, his voice a low growl. I don't want to see you again. David smirked. You'll regret this, Musk. You can't win this fight on your own. Remember that. Without another word, David turned and walked out of the room, leaving Elon and Lydia standing in stunned silence. As the door closed, Elon's anger began to dissipate, replaced by a sharp sense of resolve. He knew this betrayal was a setback, but it wasn't the end. If anything, it made his mission clearer than ever. The stakes had been raised. The transparent corporation was no longer just fighting for a new business model, it was fighting for its survival. Lydia spoke first, her voice calm but filled with concern. What now? Elon took a deep breath. We move forward. We'll expose this for what it is. David was a problem, but he's gone now. We'll make sure Cross knows exactly what kind of company they're dealing with. We don't back down. We keep pushing. Full transparency. No exceptions. Lydia nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. We'll fight this, Elon. Together. Elon looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker below. The road ahead was darker now, the path filled with more obstacles than he had imagined. But there was no turning back. This wasn't just about proving a point anymore. It was about showing the world that the system could be beaten, and that the truth, no matter how difficult, was always worth fighting for. Meanwhile, the fallout from David's betrayal spread quickly through the company. Employees were shocked, unsure of who they could trust. But Elon knew that the only way forward was to keep the lines of communication open, to remain true to the values that had brought them this far. The transparent corporation was about to face its greatest test yet. The question was no longer just about the company's ideals. It was about whether they could survive the harsh reality of the business world while still holding on to those ideals. But for Elon Musk, the challenge was clear. And he was ready to face it head-on. The sting of David's betrayal still lingered, but Elon knew better than to wallow in it. The transparent corporation had been rocked, but it wasn't broken. The leaks had caused turmoil, the board members were rattled, and the media vultures circled, eager to feast on the latest scandal. Yet, amid the chaos, Elon stood firm. He had come this far with one goal in mind, to change the world of business for good. And no one, least of all a backstabbing former ally, was going to take that away from him. As the news spread about David's actions, the pressure mounted. Cross, the competitor David had sold out to, was quick to capitalize on the situation. They flooded the market with aggressive ad campaigns, mocking the transparent corporation for its supposed hypocrisy. The media, ever hungry for drama, devoured the narrative, Elon Musk's grand experiment fails. Transparency or just a facade? But Elon wasn't a man to let a storm cloud stay over him for too long. He knew the true test was just beginning. It was late one evening when Elon gathered his leadership team in the boardroom. Lydia, Emily, and David's replacement, Sarah, sat around the table with him. The air was thick with tension, but there was an underlying sense of determination in the room. "All right," Elon started, "we've all been through the ringer lately. But here's the truth, what happened with David? It was a wake-up call. We can't afford to make the same mistakes again. We need to tighten up, and we need to double down on transparency, not just because it's what we stand for, but because it's the only way forward." Lydia leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "We need to act fast. The audit results were positive, but we need to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to safeguard against this type of betrayal in the future." Elon nodded. "Agreed. But it's not just about protecting ourselves. We've got to show the world that the transparent corporation is stronger than ever. We need a big move. Something bold. Something that proves we're not just talking about transparency, we're living it." Emily, who had been mostly quiet, spoke up. "What if we opened up our operations even further? I mean, really go all in on transparency. What if we did a live stream of our entire decision-making process for the next quarter? The public can see everything, every meeting, every conversation, every strategy session. It's not just a statement, it's action." Elon's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "That's it. A full, unfiltered window into the heart of this company. No more smoke and mirrors. We'll invite the world to watch as we make every decision, big or small. If we're going to be a corporation built on transparency, we'll put our money where our mouth is." The room went silent for a moment, everyone processing the idea. Sarah was the first to speak. "But Elon, that's going to be a logistical nightmare. There will be hundreds of hours of footage. Are we sure the company is ready for that kind of scrutiny?" "Yeah, but the alternative is to keep hiding behind closed doors. The world already thinks we're hiding something, that we can't be trusted. So we show them everything, warts and all. We'll take full responsibility for our actions, good or bad. If we succeed, it'll be proof that transparency works. If we fail, we'll fail openly, but we'll still be honest about it." Lydia's eyes softened, a hint of admiration in her gaze. "This is what we need. The transparency we've been talking about isn't just about showing our successes, it's about showing our struggles, too." "Exactly," Elon said, standing up. "And this will be our comeback story. We'll make history. The world will watch us fail or succeed in real time. And in the process, we'll redefine what it means to be a corporation." The announcement came just days later, in a press release that reverberated across the globe. The transparent corporation would live stream its entire decision-making process for the next 3 months. Investors, customers, and even competitors would have a front-row seat to the company's inner workings. No scripts, no edits, just the raw reality of corporate life. The reaction was mixed. Some hailed it as the ultimate act of corporate accountability, a bold move that would set a new standard for openness. Others, however, were skeptical. Critics questioned whether Elon Musk had lost his mind. Could any company withstand that much exposure? And what would happen when their decisions faltered in front of the whole world? Still, the excitement around the idea was undeniable. As the live stream launched, thousands of viewers flooded in, curious to see what a corporation with total transparency would look like. For Elon, the first few days were a blur of meetings, product discussions, and financial projections, all broadcast live for anyone who cared to watch. His team worked around the clock, knowing that their every move was being scrutinized. There were moments of brilliance, like the announcement of a groundbreaking new partnership with a sustainable energy company. Elon and his team discussed the deal live, answering questions from both stakeholders and the public in real time. The response was overwhelmingly positive. The company was starting to feel the momentum building again. But there were also tough moments. In one particularly difficult meeting, a product launch failed to meet projections. The board was nervous, the financial outlook uncertain. Elon was acutely aware of the cameras in the corner, capturing every hesitation, every decision. But instead of retreating, he stood firm. This is where we are. We've made mistakes. But we will fix them. I promise you that. It was this unflinching honesty that began to win back the trust of the public. The viewers saw Elon and his team grapple with their challenges in real time, and they saw that the company wasn't giving up. They were fighting for their vision. But then, in the midst of this high-wire act, another blow came. Cross, the competitor David had sold out to, began to launch a series of attacks. Calling out the transparent corporation for being reckless, suggesting that their open decision-making process was a sign of desperation. They painted Elon's transparency as a gimmick, something designed to distract from the company's inevitable failure. Elon took it all in stride. "Let them talk," he said to Lydia one evening as they watched Cross's latest ad campaign. "We know what we're doing. And they're just scared." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of challenges and victories. The live stream continued to capture the highs and lows of running a business, but through it all, the team at the Transparent Corporation remained focused. They were building something real. They weren't just playing the game, they were changing the game. And the world was watching. It had been months since the live stream initiative began, and the world had seen the Transparent Corporation evolve in real time. The highs, the lows, the mistakes, and the triumphs, all laid bare for anyone to witness. Critics had come and gone, some with their doubts, others with their skepticism. Yet through it all, Elon Musk and his team had remained resolute. Their message was clear: the future of business would not be built on deception or half-truths. It would be built on transparency, integrity, and accountability. The atmosphere in the boardroom was electric as Elon stood at the head of the table, looking at his team. Lydia, Emily, Sarah, and the others sat around him, all of them exhausted but exhilarated. The live stream had finally come to a close after 3 intense months. And while it had been draining, it had also been transformative. "All right," Elon said, his voice steady and filled with a quiet confidence. "We've done something no one else has dared to do. We've shown the world what true transparency looks like. We've made mistakes, but we've owned them. We've celebrated our wins, and we've learned from our losses. And in the end, we've proven that you can be successful without hiding anything." Lydia smiled, her eyes tired but filled with pride. "This is more than just a business model. This is a movement." "Exactly," Elon agreed. "This isn't just about the Transparent Corporation anymore. It's about changing the way people think about business. About showing them that honesty isn't just a virtue, it's a strategy. A way to build trust, loyalty, and long-term success." Emily raised her hand, eager to speak. "And that's why we've got a lot of eyes on us right now. People are watching. Investors, competitors, consumers, everyone. They want to see what we're going to do next. Which is why, Elon said, pausing for dramatic effect, it's time to take this even further. I've been thinking about our next move for a while. The live stream was a success. But it was just the beginning. Now, we need to show the world how our transparency translates into real-world impact. Sarah leaned forward. What are you thinking? Elon smiled. We need to launch a new initiative, a global campaign focused on sustainability. But not just any sustainability initiative. A partnership with local communities, governments, and NGOs to create transparent supply chains for every product we make. We'll not only show the world how we're doing it, we'll invite them to be a part of the process. From sourcing raw materials to final product distribution, we will let them see every step of the journey. Lydia raised an eyebrow, impressed. You want to take the concept of transparency and apply it to every part of our operations? Exactly, Elon said. We're going to make our supply chains so open, so traceable, that people will know exactly where their products come from. We'll prove that sustainable practices are not only the right thing to do, they're the smart thing to do. The room fell silent for a moment as the team processed the idea. It was bold. It was ambitious. But with everything they had already accomplished, it felt like the natural next step. Finally, Emily spoke up. This is big. It's a whole new level of transparency. That's the point, Elon replied. We're not just building a company. We're building a legacy. And if we succeed in this, we won't just change the way people view business. We'll change the way they view the future. The next few months were a whirlwind of meetings, collaborations, and partnerships. Elon and his team worked tirelessly to establish the foundation for their new initiative, reaching out to governments, environmental organizations, and local businesses around the world. They focused on creating a system that allowed consumers to track the origins of the products they purchased, ensuring that every step of the process met rigorous sustainability standards. The media, once skeptical of the transparent corporation, began to shift in their coverage. The world was paying attention. Investors, who had been hesitant after the scandal and David's betrayal, started to come back, seeing the long-term potential in the company's new direction. Major corporations that had once scoffed at Elon's vision of transparency now began to take notes, realizing that they, too, might have to evolve or risk being left behind. The first major test came when the company launched its first fully transparent product line, a new line of electric vehicles that could be traced from the raw materials used in their construction to the final assembly. Consumers could see exactly how the vehicles were made, where the materials came from, and how sustainable the entire process was. It was an overwhelming success. The public response was phenomenal, and within weeks, the vehicles were sold out. But the true victory wasn't in the sales numbers. It was in the message. Businesses didn't need to hide behind corporate secrets. They could be honest, open, and still succeed. One evening, as Elon stood on the balcony of his office, looking out over the city skyline, Lydia joined him. She stood quietly for a moment, taking in the view, before turning to Elon. You've done it, she said softly. We've done it. Elon nodded. It's only the beginning. But yeah, we've made it. The truth was, Elon hadn't expected the journey to be easy. There had been moments when he questioned if they could really pull it off, when the weight of the world seemed to be bearing down on him. But he had kept going. Because deep down, he knew that what they were building wasn't just about business, it was about changing the future. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elon Musk finally allowed himself a rare moment of peace. He had fought against the tide, he had faced down betrayal, and he had overcome every obstacle in his path. Now, the Transparent Corporation wasn't just a company, it was a beacon of hope for a better, more honest future. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough.